Chapter 8:23. Deal with the Sky Hall. Michael heard the voice from behind. He slowly turned around to see a hunchback old woman with pure white hair appear near the throne. Her hair was tied into a bun, and she wore pearl robes adorned with intricate symbols that shined in the light. The old woman climbed down the stairs without a concern in the world. When the elf and the others noticed the old woman, they immediately bowed. The old woman didn't make any gesture to acknowledge the soldiers. Instead, her gaze was locked on Michael. The soldiers knelt down as their heavy metal clanked against the marble floor. "Ghost," the old woman addressed Michael by his name. "So you are the ruler of this castle?" Michael asked the old woman. "Everyone leave." The old woman raised her voice. Her voice sounded like a bell in a silent area. As soon as the soldiers heard the old woman's order, they stood up, turned around, and left the throne hall without a word, leaving Michael and the old woman behind. "I am a representative," said the old woman. "Then tell your boss to stay out of this world. It belongs to me." Michael looked down to match the old woman's eyes. Although he could kill the old woman with a single look, he refrained himself from doing so. "You may have power in this world, but we both know you won't stay here forever. You will return to the dark ocean and eventually step foot off the southern continent, leaving Mugashika's protection. It is wise for you not to cross my higher-ups if you want to survive," the old woman said. She was nonchalant despite knowing ghosts could end her life in a heartbeat. Michael was slightly surprised. The old woman seemed to know more about him. Obviously, she was someone with knowledge about him. "Careful with the tone, Grandma. I can still kill you with a snap of my fingers," said Michael. The old woman just let out a gentle smile. "You can, but you won't. Unless you want the Sky Hall to be at your doorsteps, you will refrain from harming any more of my soldiers," said the old woman. "Typical Sky Hall. Don't think I don't know your little act of harvesting netherils and demon skeletons. Also, if the Sky Hall had really wanted me gone, the war would have started already. But here we are. So what does that tell you? Your boss doesn't want me dead for some reason." Michael was just making a guess here. He didn't know he was spot on. As he said, Andor, the god of time and space and the man who controlled the Sky Hall behind the scene, did not want Michael dead. Instead, he was manipulating the events to put Noah and Michael against each other. For him to escape the immortal realm, he needed a god dead. Since the past Dark Lord beat him to near death, Andor hoped the dead god would be Michael at the end of their battle. "If you don't cut off your infected arm, you will die. Just like, you are an infection to all worlds. Some people are the infected arm. The Sky Hall must do what's necessary to keep the body alive." Nice way to justify genocides and to slaughter innocent people. "None who helps you is innocent." The old woman saw lightning bolts appear around his wrist. They crackled, hissing like coiling snakes to shoot her down. Only one thing stopped Michael from ending the old woman's life: his instincts and the system's warning in his head. For some reason, the system went crazy when an urge to kill the old woman appeared in his heart. Michael took a deep breath as the crackling lightning bolts disappeared. "By the looks of it, we both have to do what we don't like," said the old woman. "And what that might be coexists in this world. You can kill anyone, but eventually, you will leave this world. Are you willing to gamble on the Wood Elves' lives that we won't bring the wrath of Sky Hall after you're gone?" As much as he hated to admit it, the old woman was right. He wouldn't be able to protect the Wood Elves forever by staying with them. Judging by the old woman's look in her eyes, he could tell she had some kind of deal to strike with him. "Why do I feel like you're about to propose a deal?" asked Michael as the old woman chuckled. "Indeed I am. It is a simple one, actually. There is a land that the locals call the Ash Field, far south of here. You agree to give that land to us, and we will stop our war against the locals." "What's important about that place?" asked Michael, only to see the old woman shake her head. "You don't have to know. Do not forget we are not allies. On the contrary, we are enemies preparing to face each other in the future. Unlike you, we aren't the gods here. You are. So you have to protect your flock." Michael knew the old woman would have already guessed he would spy on them if he agreed to the deal. But still, the old woman wanted to strike this deal, which made Michael more curious about this Ash Field. "What's about this place that made the Sky Hall negotiate with me, the Dark Lord?" Michael questioned himself. Deep down, Michael knew agreeing to this deal was the right thing to do. He could use the time to learn more about this world, especially the ash field, and make the wood elves and all who worship him stronger. Once he was done with the wood elves, they would chase away any invader who stepped into this magical land without his help. To do that he needed time. Unfortunately, making this deal was the only way he would get more of it. "Do we have a deal?" asked the old woman. "As you said, we both have to do things we don't like." But, Michael raised a finger. "If any of your soldiers ever stepped a foot outside this ash field, you won't deal with Ghost. You will deal with the Dark Lord." The place darkened as Michael said. For the first time, a sliver of fear emerged in the old woman's eyes. "And when I visit this place tomorrow, I don't want to see any more of your soldiers." As he finished his sentence, Mitchie turned around and walked away from the old woman. There was nothing for him to learn more from the old woman. After Michael left the castle, he noticed the Sky Hall soldiers standing in a line, blocking his path. But soon, the elf captain signaled the soldiers to clear the path for him. When Michael noticed the elf, his eyes burned with rage and killing lust. If Michael was a betting man, he would say the elf had learned what had happened to his precious men. Michael didn't say anything to antagonize the man. He didn't think it was worth it. "This isn't over," the elf mumbled, just loud enough for Michael to hear him. "You better hope so," said Michael before disappearing from their sight. This time, the soldiers confirmed their suspicions. "He is using spells." The elf was speechless, but that didn't reduce his anger toward the human by any means. After leaving the castle, Michael returned to where he had left the wood elves behind. By the time Michael arrived, the wood elves had gathered around a pile of metal armor and weapons. The wood elves immediately dropped to their knees when they saw Michael. Even Taskin, who had previously lost his faith in his god, seemed completely turned to his old ways. "They will leave this place tomorrow. This battle with them is over, but we have yet to win the war," said Michael. Vidora and the villages were waiting for Michael's return. Meanwhile, the wood elves bathed Vidora with everything Iag asked for. The Hydra sat on Michael's throne and asked for every fruit the wood elves had for themselves. The wood elven ladies particularly fell in love with the cute yet terrifying creature that accompanies their god. They spared no expense in showering the Hydra with love and reverence, especially after Iag gave her word that Michael would heal the wounded. The sun slowly descended on the horizon, painting the blue sky with its golden rays. Every tree and plant life in the forest radiated dazzling lights. Darkness brought the real beauty of Itanes. Vidora saw the forest light up as the entire forest seemed magical. Even Cain was in awe of the beauty. With the trees and plants being a natural light source, the wood elves did not need any torches to brighten their village. "What's taking him so long?" Sarba asked his siblings. He was worried. "If you ask me, I'd say he's exploring this world and collecting herbs and stuff. I saw how his eyes lit up when we first arrived in this world," said Iag. She was indeed right. Michael was collecting herbs and exploring the magical forest as they spoke. That's the reason for his lateness. "Look!" A child's shout broke Sarba's focus on Iag. Kirat limped toward the wood platform's edge and saw Michael and Taskin's men. "They are back!" Thilv's mother bounced up and down in joy like a child. Eventually, Vidora saw Michael land on the platform as the wood elves knelt down to show him their respect. He just casually waved at them, wordlessly ordering them to rise. Then he came to the throne and sat beside them. "Something's wrong," Iag said, looking at the dark lines on his forehead. "What is it?" asked Sarba. "I made a deal with Sky Hall," said Michael. Chapter 8:24 A cool god. Michael took Vidora and flew away from the village built on the trees. He came to a mountain cliff where he first appeared in this world. The forest glistened like a neon city with flocks of magical flying beasts decorating the sky in the distance under the starry sky. Looking at the mother tree in the distance, Michael told Vidora everything that had transpired in the castle. After listening to Michael's story, all three heads agreed that making a deal with the old woman was the right thing to do. Otherwise, Michael would be in a constant war in this world too. For a change, Michael wanted some peaceful time here. But he couldn't have peace with the Sky Hall soldiers running around. "Good thing we have drones and spiders to spy on them when they are in the ash field," said Sarba. "But we have to be careful. They know we will do that." Still, they're going for it. It could only mean one thing. They can hide whatever is there from our eyes, said Kane. Time flew past as Michael discussed every aspect of their plan with Fedora. He had to say that it was a wonderful conversation. A while later, Michael tried to contact Gaia, but he couldn't connect to her. The system asked way too many badass points, which Michael outright rejected. Wherever Gaia was, he trusted her to handle herself well. Gradually, Michael felt the exhaustion getting to him as he fell down to take a long nap. He only remembered closing his eyes. By the time he opened them, he saw the sun rising on the horizon. This morning he woke up the same as every day, stretching his muscles. Despite being in a different world, he got up, freshened up, and waltzed into the forest to take a calm morning walk. There was a gentle breeze, creating the single sound of rustling leaves. The leaves appeared as though they were dying to fall out of the tree and join their companions on the forest floor. Together with pine needles and other colorful flora, the leaves formed a thick, springy carpet for him to walk upon. A lazy mist hazed his vision, making the forest and the horizon seem like one from a storybook. The forest around him was imperturbable, as if it was keeping a secret hidden deep within itself. Walking underneath the shade of the trees, he found himself appreciating the scent of these new alien trees. Encompassed by the thick, heavy air, he watched as a single bird that looked like a sparrow fluttered high above the cyan forest. A few feet next to him was an eager red-furred monkey hastily scampered from tree to tree, awaiting the chill of winter. The forest, he realized, was home to many magical creatures he had never seen in his life before. In giving protection and food, the forest was gladly rewarded with the company of these animals. The forest was pure and clean, as though it had never been disturbed by man and his vicious life-killing machines. Luckily, the alchemy book he bought from the system included the wildlife in this world. Otherwise, Michael would have failed to tell the difference between a poisonous plant to a medicinal herb. Some of the glowing mushrooms seemed toxic as hell. Michael collected all of them one by one for future experiments. After mastering all the formulas that exist in the world, he was researching new potions and pills. He had collected hundreds of herbs on his way to the village. When he arrived at the outskirts, Michael simply leaped into the air and landed right beside his throne. The villagers knelt down when they saw him. "You do not have to kneel down every time you see me," said Michael. Their kneeling became quite tiring so quickly. "Isn't this our duty, Dark Lord?" Kirat asked Michael as he shook his head. "There is nothing more dangerous than having blind faith in someone, Kirat. You are not mindless creatures. Keep your faith and loyalty toward me in your heart. That's enough for me. I do not expect you all to kneel down every time you see me," said Michael. One of the many reasons Qinjiu and the Sky Hall were so hellbent on killing him was how Qinjiu witnessed a future where people had no free will. Contrary to what she saw, Michael wanted everyone in the world to be free. If the Sky Hall and the Guardian Guild hadn't tried to kill him and imprison him, Michael's aim would have been just getting stronger and living his life to the fullest. In a way, they pushed him to be the Dark Lord. So every step of the way, Michael had been cautioned that he wouldn't turn into something Qinjiu said he would. Besides, if he had accepted the Wood Elves behaving like robots, their individual traits and talents might not come to light. Exploring their talents was just as important as exploring this world to Michael. The Wood Elves reluctantly nodded and raised to their feet. Then Michael lazily sat on his throne with his gaze fixed on Kirat. "How's the wounded doing?" Michael asked the elder elf. "They are alive thanks to you, Dark Lord," said Kirat. "So what's your day-to-day life like? What did you people do all day before they invaded your land?" Michael was curious to learn about their day-to-day life. They had no fancy cities, arch-energy and evil cultivators to disturb their daily life. So Michael wondered how they passed their time. "Oh," the old elf's eyes lit up. "We wake up, tend to the forest, teach the children our ways, collect fruits and vegetables from the forest, and send gifts to the nearby tribes. But most of our time is spent before your statue, praying and talking to you about our lives. You can talk to me now, Taskin." Michael turned his gaze toward Taskin. He had a feeling this particular wood elf has something in his mind. Although Michael had a pretty good idea about it, he wanted to hear from Taskin himself. The moment Michael gestured at Taskin to step forward, Kirat's heart started to pound against his chest. Taskin was one of the few elves who lost their faith in the Dark Lord after the demons invaded their world. Speak your mind, Taskin. I am a cooler god than you think, Michael reassured the wood elf with a gentle smile. Taskin looked a bit reluctant at first, but seeing everyone's gazes were fixed on him, he sighed and decided to ask the one question that kept him awake many nights. When the demons invaded us and slaughtered thousands of our people, we prayed to you non-stop. But what did we do not to deserve your kindness and mercy then, Dark Lord? Are you questioning our god, Taskin? Karat's face twitched when he saw Taskin question Michael. But Michael shut him up with a wave of his hand. The wood elves who heard Taskin felt chill running down their spine. The Dark Lord, they learned from the notes, was not a cooler god as he said. In stark contrast, he was a vengeful one. Thilv trembled, but Michael calmed their nerves with a smile. Do you see these scars, Taskin? Michael asked Taskin, pointing at countless scars riddling his body. Taskin nodded. I wasn't born with these scars, Taskin. Each of them has a story to it. You are very wrong if you think gods have no enemies. Karat's jaw dropped a bit when he heard the Dark Lord. There are many worlds out there, each more powerful and dangerous than yours. I am at war with the demons you fought here, but what you've seen is not even a fraction of their power or what they could do. The wood elves behind Taskin gasped. Let me simplify this. Out there, each of them could use what you call magic. Some of them are as powerful as I am at this point. When you were fighting your war, I was fighting my own. But if I have to fight 2 wars at the same time for my people, I will gladly do it. Michael's words brought tears to many eyes. The wood elves sobbed, feeling the radiance from his words. First, I have to prepare you for the future before us. Like it or not, this is just a temporary peace, and we will fight them in the future. And we will fight for you, Dark Lord. Thilv stepped forward and gave Michael her word. You have to. Not because I ask you to, but because if they win, the world we know will disappear forever, Michael warned them. The world he saw a glimpse of was still haunting his dreams. There was no doubt in Michael's mind higher powers were working against him. For instance, the one the past Dark Lord warned him about. The one who would get stronger if he slaughtered the beasts in the demon's grave. Another example would be Mugashuko and the one Dark Queen he serves. She was not only a threat to his universe, but to multiple universes. Any one of them could be the reason for the future Chinjio witness. One thing was certain in Michael's mind. He was not responsible for that world she saw. Everything Taskin and the wood elves thought about the Dark Lord changed in a blink of an eye. They never expected the almighty Dark Lord to have enemies who could challenge him. Nonetheless, their faith in the Dark Lord only increased after he explained why he hadn't answered their prayers, not the other way around. Now that I am here, I will give you something that will let you directly talk to me. You will be able to contact me whenever you want. This way, what happened wouldn't happen again, said Michael as the wood elves gasped in surprise. Did my words satisfy you, Taskin? Michael asked the wood elf. To be honest, Michael saw great potential in Taskin and Thilv. They could be his first subordinates in this magical world. But first, he needed to know their resolve and will to serve him. Please forgive me if I said anything wrong, Dark Lord. Taskin lowered his head. Not at all. I like when my people speak their minds. In the future, if you want to ask or say anything, do not hold back. Even a god can learn much from mortals, said Michael. Taskin and Thilv's eyes watered, seeing how down-to-earth their god was despite how powerful he was. As Thilv was standing with her watery eyes, Michael turned his gaze toward her. Thilv, I heard you have a map of this forest. Can I see it? Yes, of course, Dark Lord. Thilv bobbed her head up and down frantically before running into one of the wooden huts. A few seconds later, she came back with a big round white leaf. On its surface, Michael saw a roughly drawn map of this forest. System, locate what we need in this map, Michael asked the system. Soon, Michael saw a glow in the map far north from their tribe. It's time to make gold coins rain, Michael chuckled inside. Chapter 825 Hontorum and the God of Light Eye. A few days ago, back on the Outer Continent, Gaia was preparing to attend the auction organized by the Hontorum. This auction was not like a typical aqua auction. Instead, the Hontorum auction had only one weapon to sell. Only those who had the invitation could enter the premises. At that moment, Gaia was not in her usual black robes or armor. On the contrary, she chose fancy clothes fit for a princess and a queen. If the dwarves suspected something amiss, they would call off the auction, and she must not let that happen. She needed to play the role of a wealthy heir, until she learned more about the devastating weapons the dwarves had recently built. He should have a good reason for not talking to me. Gaia laid flat on the queen-sized bed and looked at the empty space beside her. She had been staying in Delgarum, the dwarven kingdom, in a high-end inn. The room had everything a rich noble could ask for, but Gaia felt lonely without Michael. She preferred a cabin with him over a castle without him. Her loneliness grew every day that went without his voice. Rolling on the bed, she kept looking at the engagement ring on her finger. The curtains covering the windows added an orange glow to the morning light. It reminded Gaia of the time she slept in a beach hut, cuddling Michael and watching the ocean emerge under the golden shimmer. For a moment, her mind conjured the rhythmic waves, soft on the sandy shore, and felt her heartbeat to the same slow pace. She breathed in deeply. A new day had begun. "My lady, it's time for you to leave the bed and get ready for the auction." Gaia heard Azazel's voice in her head like an annoying alarm. "All right." Gaia exhaled heavily. She reached her hand out to the fabric, noticing how up close the light poured through every open space between fibers, no different from how it once came through the beach hut walls, illuminating like brilliant fireflies each dawn. The blanket was warm beneath her fingers, and when the sun flooded the room, repainting the colors, she felt a little of those golden rays soak into her skin. Finally, Gaia left the bed to take a bath in the bathroom attached to the room. Almost after 30 minutes, Gaia exited the room, wearing the silky smooth bath towel Michael gave her. Then, with a flick of her wrist, she adorned the elegant noble dress Michael brought her from the system for occasions such as this one. The mirror before her reflected the dress, covering only a small portion of her shoulders and flowing down into a fancy queen and neckline. It was a tight fit that put the focus on her breasts but in a graceful manner. Her arms were only covered at her shoulders, a choice that added to the elegance and grace of the dress. The elegant black dress waist was thin, but it was a loose fit. A bow had been wrapped around her, resting gently on her lower back. Below the waist, the dress fitted snugly around her and had an accordion style. The dress reached just below her knees and was longer at the sides and back of the dress. She was wearing open toes, which added simplicity and elegance. To top it all off, she wore a subtle necklace and several elegant bracelets. Before leaving the room, Gaia double-checked the teleportation scrolls and the APD around her wrist. After making sure everything was in place, Gaia left the cozy room. By the time she reached the bustling street of Delgarum, a carriage was waiting for her. The carriage was owned and manned by someone from the Dark Lord's army. "Shall we go, my lady?" asked the middle-aged man in the driver's seat. Gaia nodded as the horses galloped toward her destination. Apparently, Hontorum dwarves chose a drama theater in the entertainment district. Because most of the dwarves couldn't fly without a flying sword, they banned flying inside the city. Thus, Gaia and all others had to use other means of transportation, such as carriages. While the carriage was on its way to the entertainment district, Gaia took out a tablet-sized mirror from her space ring. "Azazel, get me Sadie and Arya," Gaia said before casting a soundproof barrier around her. Soon, the dark mirror flickered as the faces of Arya and Sadie appeared in the mirror side by side. "My lady." "Dark Queen." Sadie and Arya lowered their heads, bowing toward Gaia. "Arya, how was the recon?" asked Gaia. "As we expected, the place was crawling with Hontorum dwarves. You can recognize them with the big ruby rings on their fingers. I suspect the auction will happen under the theater. When I was there, I saw 2 dwarves guarding the stairs. They had some kind of contraption near them, like a lever," Arya reported to Gaia. "Did they suspect you?" Arya shook her head. "No. I had the advantage of blending with the crowd." "What about humans?" "Normally I'd assume a tall human like you would stand out in a crowd full of dwarves. The entertainment district is surprisingly diverse, my lady. Except for the elves, you can see almost every race there. Of course, the majority of them were dwarves, but I had enough orcs and humans to blend with," said Arya. "That's because Delgarum is holding an annual think tank," Sadie interjected as Gaia turned her focus to the Silvermoon girl. You mean a gathering where all the races come to Delgarum to show their inventions? Gaia asked as Sadie nodded. Gaia had heard about the think tank, and even knew some of the Naga ministers who wanted to participate in this think tank. While she was in Nagaland, Gaia always advocated against participating in it, because she didn't like the idea of their innovations going public. Therefore, Gaia chose not to participate, just like the elves. But now that Zanali and her mother were in charge, that would soon change. Rumor has it that the dwarves received some interesting blueprints this year, said Sadie. Did you hear anything about the man who invented the Death Kiss crossbows? Whoever it is, they are extremely good at hiding their steps. My girls are working day and night on this, and they came up with nothing. But my lady, I suspect there is more about this than it meets the eye. What do you mean? The same time you met the orcs and came across those crossbows, a guardian carriage had entered and left the kingdom in a hurry. A light bulb lit in Gaia's head. She had indeed seen a carriage with the Guardian Guild symbol painted on it when she was trailing Valmos. Initially, she suspected Noah to be in the kingdom. But Sadie's little birdies came up with nothing. Moreover, Sadie's spies in Pentown informed her that Noah was with his family at that time. So Gaia didn't pay much mind to the carriage. She had too many things on her plate to trail the carriages as according to Sadie. There was more than one carriage. You think one of those carriages might have transported the inventor? We can't deny it, my lady. I am working on turning a guardian to the dark side. Once I am done, we might know more about him. Gaia noticed a strange glow in Sadie's eyes. It was like a tigress on her way to a hunt. Obviously, turning people to the dark side thrilled Sadie, and if she managed to turn a guardian to their side, it would be a huge help in the future. Buying guardians with gold coins used to be so easy when Noah was not the supreme guardian. After he took the helm, he launched an extensive investigation and fired all the corrupted guardians. Now finding a corrupt guardian was as rare as finding a gold coin on the street. Be careful. Don't fly too close to the sun. If you feel something is wrong, back off. Noah tends to give us surprises. I will, my lady. Also, keep an eye on the Winston Manor. I have a strange feeling about that. As you wish, my lady. Sadie agreed with a nod as Gaia turned her gaze back to Arya. Arya, I want you to cover all the exits from the theater. I don't think we have enough coins to win the auction. So we have to trail whoever wins the auction and get our hands on the weapon. My people are already covering the exits as we speak, my lady. Unless they use teleportation scrolls, we can trail them the moment they step outside the theater, said Arya. Don't worry about teleportation. Eladir will take care of that. Eladir had already reached the theater, and engravings runes around the theater to prevent anyone from using teleportation scrolls. The runes would stay inactive until someone tries to use a scroll. Stopping someone from using a teleportation scroll was much easier than tracking them down after they had used one. Gaia left no stone unturned in this plan, because failure was not an option. If those weapons had the capability to turn the tide of war, the Dark Army needed to have them on their side. After dismissing Arya and Sadie, Gaia contacted Azazel as he appeared in the mirror. My lady, Azazel bowed. Tell Saber to send one of his people to shadow Sadie. If the Guardians are digging a hole to trap her, I want her safe. Sadie was too valuable to lose. So Gaia wanted to keep her hidden and safe from the Guardians. If the Guardians found out she is working for the Dark Lord, their dreams of controlling the Silvermoon and building a web of spies would crumble to dust. Following Sadie's matter, Gaia had one more thing to deal with before turning her full focus on the Hontorum dwarves. Have you heard from Mother Year? Asked Gaia. While Saber was in the Nether Realm, collecting rare herbs for Michael, Adelia was tasked to shadow the elves who cursed Christopher and imprisoned Claire's mother. She was ordered to rescue Claire's mother by any means necessary by the Dark Lord himself. She has reached Nelnather and is getting close to the Mortero family. She also asked me to keep an eye on you, my lady, Gaia smiled. And I would ask you the same. Keep an eye on her. I want and can't lose her again. I will talk to her after this auction. At that point in time, Gaia had no idea the surprise Noah had for all of them. Chapter 8, 26 Hontorum. And the god of light too. The entertainment district of Embercrest was filled with all sorts of people except the rich. Once again, the dwarves tend to care little about status among their own race. One could see a millionaire dwarf drink and sing in a pub with his buddies, who might very well be minors. It was very difficult for people to tell the difference between a rich dwarf and a poor dwarf. After a long smooth ride, Gaia's carriage reached the theater. From the outside, it looked rustic, beautiful, and cheerful. Clay bricks and carved pillars made up most of the building's outer structure. It was difficult to see through the curtained windows, but the liveliness from within could be felt outside. "Park the carriage nearby and wait for my word," Gaia said to the driver and stepped out of the carriage. A wide straight avenue littered with dwarves welcomed Gaia. As Arya said, Gaia noticed many orcs, humans, and beastmen on the street. Thanks to those, she didn't stand out among the dwarves, and the short bushy-beard species didn't raise an eyebrow as they would if she had visited the place later this year. 20 or so marble stairs led to the theater door flanked by 2 dwarves in silver armor and warhammers with intricate engravings. HRRM. The dwarves growled under their breath when they saw Gaia's long legs. Hate toward the taller species was evident in their eyes as the dwarves opened the door for Gaia. As she entered the theater through the decorated metal door, she was welcomed by dancing thespians and excitement. It was as charming inside as it was on the outside. Rounded stone beams supported the upper floor and the huge lamps attached to them. The walls were decorated with mounted animal heads, shields, and portraits of various dwarves. The theater itself was packed. As one would expect, dwarves were the primary clientele here, which often meant great company and chaos. Several long tables were occupied by beastmen. Humans and a few orcs occupied the other, smaller tables who seemed to be enjoying themselves a lot, especially the dancers. The center stage was built several meters higher than the ground, but not too high to ache one's neck. Several female dancers, including beastmen women and human women, danced gracefully, wearing revealing clothes. The air reeked of freshly brewed ale. It was almost overwhelming. Everywhere Gaia turned, she saw the dwarves drinking, laughing, and fighting like it was no one's business. This behavior didn't surprise Gaia much, as the dwarves were unruly creatures with unpredictable behavior. Gaia's gaze swept across the theater, and noticed a few humans walking toward the 2 dwarves guarding the stairs. "That must be the entrance," Gaia said to herself before squeezing through the crowd toward the dwarves. She had to be careful not to step on any dwarves on her way, because there were several of them rolling on the ground. For a great 8 clan, Han Torum picked an unusual spot for the auction. Gaia took out the invitation with a flick of her wrist and held it in her hand. The dwarves noticed the approaching human and the golden invitation in her hand. "Here you go." Gaia extended the invitation for the dwarves to see the embossed letters on the invitation. The 2 dwarves gawked at the invitation from top to bottom. Then, they removed the red rope blocking the stairs leading downstairs. Golden lamps brightly lit the steps and led Gaia to a spacious hall under the theater. Only a few people remained in the hall. The marble floor shimmed under the bright chandelier light. Crimson-red curtains woven with elegant designs covered the windows and the walls. When she entered the hall, a human girl wearing an alluring red dress that hugged her perfect hourglass structure came to greet Gaia. She was one of the thespians and was assigned to be the auctioneer. "My lady," the red-haired beauty bowed toward Gaia. "Please enjoy the beverages and make yourself at home. The auction will begin shortly," said the beauty. She tried to avoid gazing at Gaia's dress but failed miserably. Her eyes sparkled, but Gaia was more focused on the others in the room. To her surprise, she noticed a few orcs along with the beastmen. As for humans, there were 4 in the room. Among the 4, 2 of them wore white robes with the iconic Guardian Guild symbol engraved on their chests. Avoiding their gazes, Gaia made her way to the long oak table with silver plates filled with snacks, fruits, and beverages such as ale, wine, and beer. "How are you doing?" When Gaia came to the table, a woman with fluffy fox ears greeted her. The woman's tail slowly swayed left and right as she sipped the wine from the golden chalice. "Good. What about you?" Gaia greeted the golden-haired woman with a gentle smile. To avoid looking out of the place, Gaia took an empty glass, poured red wine, and pretended to drink it. "I couldn't help but adore your dress," the woman complimented Gaia's dress. Gaia was no stranger to fake compliments, But the woman's words were genuine. Any woman with a tad bit of taste in clothes would kill to get a dress like the one Gaia was wearing. It was a pity that Gaia didn't know why people had been glaring at her dress the moment she stepped out of the carriage. If anything, this dress was drawing too much attention toward her. "My fiancé gave this to me," said Gaia. "He must have good taste in clothing. Oh, pardon my manners. I am Calibra," the beast woman introduced herself, reaching out to shake Gaia's hand. For a moment, Gaia stared at her in surprise. "Aren't you a bit too friendly when we are all here to bid for weapons?" asked Gaia, but she shook her hand anyways. She followed Michael's words of making allies anywhere you can instead of enemies. "We ladies have to stick together. What's the worst that could happen by making some friends?" Calibra shrugged. Calibra's cute and cuddly look may fool the others but not Gaia. She could identify a killer when she saw one, and Calibra was a predator despite her foxy ears. Gaia had a feeling that Calibra may have sensed the same. No one would send an innocent to a black auction that deals in destructive weapons, especially not the Beast King Zelik. "Look at them going." Calibra's gaze fell on the Guardians. Why do they want to participate in this auction when their new Supreme Guardian brags about stopping wars? Judging by Calibra's tone, it was apparent the Fox hates the Guardian Guild. Although they seemed to share the same hatred toward the Guardian Guild, Gaia remained silent. She was here to track down the buyer and the weapon, not to bitch about the guild and Noah with this total stranger. While Gaia was waiting for the auction to begin, she received another shock. The orcs who bought the Death Kiss crossbows entered the hall with their red-skinned leader leading them. Once the orcs entered the hall, an uneasy atmosphere surrounded them. Everyone, including the green orcs, tried not to make any direct eye contact with them. Luckily for Gaia, she changed her face using the mask. Otherwise, they might have recognized her and suspected something was amiss. None seemed to have any idea about these orcs. But whoever they were, they had deep pockets and connections to bid for the weapon and receive an extra invitation from Han Torum. "Excuse me for a moment, Miss Calibra." Gaia excused herself away from Calibra and went to the corner. "Azazel, are you getting this?" The spider hidden in her hair crawled onto her shoulder and sent the feedback to Azazel, where he recorded everything. "The same ones who bought the crossbows. It seems like we have new players, my lady," Azazel amused. "The question is, where do they stand when it comes to the Dark Lord? Put their faces in a recording crystal and send them to the elf. He might have some idea," Gaia said to Azazel in a husky voice. Even after Michael had revealed himself as the Dark Lord, the business relationship between him and Lord Information remained untethered. The elf preferred gold coins and favors more than anything. As long as he got paid, Lord Information gave no shit about where the coins came from. The only problem, however, was accessing the elf. After Noah took the mantle, he put surveillance on almost every information broker in the world, and Lord Information was on top of that list. Luckily, Michael had built drones and spiders that could connect Lord Information to Azazel. "We will find out soon enough, ladies and gentlemen." Gaia heard the hostess voice after a few clinking sounds. The hostess stood in the center with a wine glass raised above her eye line. Everyone turned their focus on the hostess as red sofas materialized around her one by one. The door Gaia came through closed from the outside, trapping them inside. "Please take your seats. The auction will begin now." The hostess gestured at the sofas as everyone plunged into the comfy cushion. Calibra and Gaia went to the center and sat beside each other, facing the red orcs. After everyone comfortably took their seats, the chandelier above them brightened. Gaia recorded everything around her with the spider, while waiting for the Hontorum dwarves to appear. At the moment, there were no dwarves in the room. That soon changed when the hall they were in split open, revealing an underground passage. The cushions trembled as a platform moved upwards, carrying the dwarves and their new contraption. A cow-sized weapon with a conical body. Its metal body was painted with gold and engraved with intricate designs. At first sight, it did not look like a weapon to anyone but a saxophone. Of course, the natives of this world didn't know what a saxophone looked like. "Is that the weapon?" Gaia asked herself. Unlike Calibra, Gaia didn't seem disappointed. She knew better than to judge a weapon by its look. The Guardians and the Red Orcs wouldn't be here if the weapon was not powerful enough to cause mass destruction. Chapter 8:27 Hontorum. And the God of Light 3. The two dwarves stood beside the unusual weapon and glanced at their audience briefly. They were like any other typical dwarves, bushy beards, bulky bodies, and smelled like ale. One had a receding forehead, while the other looked young with black curly hair. Everyone in the hall was able to see the weapon clearly. Now they all wanted to see what it could do before they started bidding. As though the dwarves had sensed their curiosity, they introduced themselves without taking any more of their time. I am Bufug and my partner is called Godun. The young dwarf introduced himself and his partner. I know no one gives a shit about our names. So let's go straight to the demonstration. Shall we? Bufug's gaze swept across the hall. Their names seemed fake to Gaia. No one in their right mind would give their real names when they were supposedly auctioning a mass destruction weapon. However, the dwarves were right. She didn't give two shits about their names. All she needed was to see what this weapon before her was capable of. Before we do that, we should tell them that this is only the prototype of the real beast, said Godun, the old dwarf. What do you mean a prototype? The Red Orc growled. Means we don't want any of you to pull a damn surprise on us. Make no mistake. The real beast is 100 times more powerful than this one. So wait till after the demonstration, said Godun. He wasn't afraid of the big brute orc despite the fact the orc could kill him with a single punch. The cultivation power between them was huge. Godun, the dwarf, was at the core formation level, while the orc was at the fusion stage. Nonetheless, the orc remained seated without resorting to violence. Just like everyone else, they wanted to see what the prototype was capable of. Once you see the demonstration and finish bidding, we will take you to the real thing in a more secured area. Gaia's plan slightly changed after hearing about the dwarves. Initially, she thought the dwarves would bring the weapon to the auction. Now the dwarves took a turn and only brought the prototype. Because of this change, she had to follow the dwarves and the one who won the auction to the real weapon and steal it from the dwarves. She hoped either the human couple or Calibra would win against the Guardians and the orcs. Among all of them, they looked least threatening with their core strengthening cultivation level. To start the demonstration, we need a volunteer, said Godun. Luckily we do have not one. Bufug raised a finger. Not two, he raised another finger. One by one he raised all of his fingers. But 5 lucky volunteers. Godun clapped his hands as the door on the other side of the hall slowly creaked open, revealing a group of people bound by their legs with iron chains. The group was surprisingly diverse. They had 1 orc, 3 humans, and a beastman who had the body of a bear and the face of a man. Move your asses. The 2 dwarves behind them poked the human with his battle axe, pushing into the hall. Calibra raised her brows in shock. Not because she saw one of her kind but because everyone in the group was at the core strengthening stage. The iron chains tied around their legs and arms didn't seem magically enhanced with runes. Rather, they looked ordinary, which led them to question why they were not trying to get out of their chains. The 2 dwarves led them into the hall, and made them stand facing the wide end of the conical weapon. There was at least 7 meters distance between the group and the weapon. Whatever they did, they sure didn't earn the dwarves' empathy. The human tried to tell the other something, but couldn't speak through the cloth tied around his mouth. Everyone in the group had their mouths shut by a piece of cloth. Now pieces of shits, listen to me and do exactly what I tell you to do. Try something funny, and you know what will happen to your precious loved ones. Bufug threatened the group in his gruff dwarven voice. The hatred in Bufug's eyes burned brightly like a campfire in pitch-black night. It made Gaia wonder what the group really did to piss the dwarves this much. But whatever they did, it was not her job to find out and rescue them. The Guardians were literally sitting there and watching this happen. Even if Michael was there instead of Gaia, he wouldn't have raised a finger when the Guardian who was supposed to do something was standing there doing nothing. Meanwhile, Godun walked back to the weapon and fiddled with the knob attached to the side of the weapon. Everyone was so focused on what the weapon could do that they barely gave a shit about the group facing the weapon head-on. Cast your most powerful defense spells when we take away the piece of cloth. Do you understand? Bufug asked as the 2 dwarves standing behind the group gave everyone a stern kick to their knees to bring them down to match their height. Even after they brought everyone down, the orc was still taller than the dwarves, which garnered some laughter among the participants. Gaia glanced at the red orc and his group to see if they would react to dwarves beating one of their own. But no, the orcs didn't even flinch an eye. It didn't surprise Gaia after she noticed the expressionless faces of the guardians. Eventually, the dwarves removed the clothes and let them get back to their feet. The dwarves waited with their battle hammers clenched tight just in case. Then Bufug threatened them once again. "Remember the faces of your loved ones and cast the strongest defense spell on your arsenal," said Bufug. Everyone in the group felt reluctant and afraid to cast the spell, but eventually they broke under the dwarf's murderous gaze. Then, they all cast their defense spell one by one. Starfire Rain. One of the humans cast the spell as countless glistening stars appeared around him, forming a bright barrier. Static Flare. Suddenly, a crimson-red light flashed across the hall when the beastmen cast the spell. The temperature in the room rose by a couple of degrees. As the spell's name suggested, a barrier made of red rays appeared around the beastman. Deflection Flash. Repose Barrier. A few moments later, everyone had a shield around them. The others, including Gaia, couldn't help looking at the scene curiously. The two dwarves who stood behind the group quickly ran toward Bufug and joined their fellow dwarves. In Gaia's eyes, the two dwarves seemed terrified. She could see the fear creeping down their spines through their eyes. The dwarves had witnessed the weapon's power before. She was certain of it. Get ready to be surprised, eh? Goddone, the old dwarf snickered as he brushed the weapon like he was caring for his own horse. Then he pushed the knob inwards as the weapon purred. Gaia expected a fiery steel ball to shoot out of the weapon as it happened with the Death Kiss crossbows. On the contrary, nothing happened. The orcs growled, thinking the dwarves had fooled them. But suddenly, the orc behind the glistening shield roared in utter pain. Gaia was taken aback by the sheer volume of his cry. The big orc screamed like he was going through. Soon, all the others joined the orc in his cry. Blood seeped through their eyes, ears, and nostrils as they collapsed down. Gaia noticed the sound of their cries getting louder as Goddone turned the knob. "What is happening?" Kalubra whispered to Gaia. "No idea," Gaia shrugged. Their cries of agony lasted an entire minute until the orc gasped for air. Then his big body hit the ground with a heavy thud. One by one, the entire group lost their breath and hit the ground with a sickening thud. Eerie silence swept across the hall. Even after they died, blood slowly drizzled out of every pore in their body. To this moment, Gaia had no idea how they died. "This is unacceptable. How do we know they were not poisoned?" The two other humans, besides the guardians, rose from his chair as though it was on fire and questioned the dwarves. Everyone had the same question in their minds. "Why don't you stand there and get your answer?" Goddone chuckled as though the human's question amused him. The golden-haired man's face turned red. He expected an answer with a more respectful tone. Except he expected that from the wrong person. Dwarves were known for many things, but respectful was not one of them. Although Gaia didn't think the dwarves used some kind of underhanded tactics to kill them, she did want to see more. By more, she wanted someone else to get killed by the weapon. "I will settle this." Surprisingly, the red orc stood up. As soon as the human saw the big, bad and brute orc stand up, his mouth shut down instantly. The orc was big enough to cast a large shadow on the hall. Then he turned his gaze toward one of his men. "Go stand there and cast yourself a defense spell," said the orc. Hearing the orc, the others were stunned. No one in their right mind would agree to that, especially after witnessing how they suffered and cried. But the orc behind the red orc surprised Gaia by nodding his head. He strolled toward the bodies and waved his hand. "Earth Barrier." The orc cast the spell as a golem made out of stone appeared in a blink of an eye. The golem was at least 10 feet tall. It placed its hands before the orc to shield him from harm. "Show us what you can do now," the red orc growled at the dwarves, who weirdly seemed excited rather than worried. Just like before, Goddone fiddled with the knob as the weapon purred like a cat. This time, the weapon vibrated for a few moments. Everyone's gazes were fixed on the golem and the orc. To their shock, the stone golem cracked. Before they could realize what had just happened, the stone golem shattered into pieces as the orc started to roar in pain. Unlike the core strengthening stage people that died a few seconds ago, The orc was a soul refiner. Yet the result was the same. The orc cried, collapsed to the ground, squirmed like a fish out of water, and suddenly his cries stopped. However, the time it took the weapon to kill the orc was longer than before. We are satisfied with the weapon. The red orc didn't even flinch at his comrade's death. He acted as nothing had happened. Gaia was speechless. She realized the Empress wasn't kidding when she said this latest contraption could turn the tide of any war. Imagine what hundreds of these weapons could do. Furthermore, this was just a prototype. So only God knew how powerful the real weapon would be. Chapter 8:28 Noah is here after witnessing the strange yet mind-blowing power of the weapon. The dwarves began the auction. The dwarves started the auction with the insane price of 20 billion gold coins. But none bat an eye at the price. Instead, the orcs raised the bid by 5 billion. Gaia was mind-blown to see how rich these orcs were. She was more curious about the orcs than before. But when she thought about what the weapon could do in a real battlefield, the price seemed fair or if not cheap. Even though Gaia had not more than 100,000 gold coins in her space ring, she raised the bid by another 5 billion just to participate in the auction. She knew the final bid would easily go to 100 billion gold coins. That kind of coin was not easy to get. Somehow, Gaia doubted a single individual could have such wealth. Even the Dark Lord Michael himself struggled to reach 1 billion gold coins in wealth. Of course, he would have easily reached that point if Noah hadn't banned the majestic alchemy chains in Hades. 30 billion. Calibra raised her hand and raised the bid casually. 50 billion. The red orc almost immediately raised the bid after Calibra. The guardians remained silent, surprisingly. To this moment, they didn't open their mouths once. As seconds turned minutes, the blood around the dead bodies slowly evaporated into the air and nauseated the others. Clean that up, Godun ordered the two dwarves behind him. The two short dwarves nodded as they ran toward the bodies while Bufug and Godun continued the auction. With each bid, the dwarves smiled brighter. The auction was making them very rich. Gaia doubted the Empress didn't send anyone to buy the weapon for herself. It seemed to be the easiest way unless the dwarves had more than one weapon built. And they planned to sell each one separately. Gaia didn't even think about it. 65 billion. The golden-haired man who snapped at the dwarf earlier raised the bid. 70 billion. Finally, the guardian opened his mouth. Gaia was tempted to rob each and everyone in the room. They all could solve their financial problem in one go. Fortunately, Michael promised they wouldn't have to worry about gold coins after he returned from the demon's grave. But even if Gaia had billions of gold coins, she didn't think she would have bid for the weapon when she had the option to steal it. Enough of this, the red orc growled. 100 billion. Gaia Browns arched up when the orc raised the bid by freaking 30 billion. Child's play, Calibra snickered. 150 billion. The orcs growled but restrained themselves from doing anything rash. Everyone in the room raised Gaia's suspicions. Among them, Gaia was almost certain that Calibra attended the auction on behalf of King Zelik, the Beast King. If that were the case, the orcs would have a difficult time outbidding the foxy woman because she had an entire nation behind her. For an orc who was heartless, the red orc was patient enough to keep himself calm. Although the dwarves were not terribly strong and lacked bodyguards, none of them dared to mess with the auction. They were all well-mannered. Calibra didn't seem like she would back down anytime soon. 180 billion. The red orc raised the bid. 200 billion. The guardians raised the bid to 200 billion. Their bidding war continued for some time, with even Gaia occasionally raising the bid by 10 or 20 billion. Eventually, the guardians and everyone backed off from the auction except Calibra and the red orc. The beast woman raised the price to 300 billion. And when the red orc was about to outbid her, the entire hall trembled slightly. For a moment, Gaia thought the dwarves had accidentally turned on the weapon. But no, the place trembled because of the guardian airship. Gaia heard the sudden commotion outside, as well as the strange whirring sound coming from above her. Her brain immediately recognized the sound. Guardians. Gaia's heart skipped a beat. My lady, the guardians dash. Gaia heard the panicked voice of Arya when the ceiling above them exploded. Before anyone could react, several people clad in silver armor roped down through the hole in the ceiling. The explosion sent Gaia and the others stumbling away. Ceiling crumbled down as the silver-armored soldiers landed on the hall. Everyone was caught off guard. "Don't move," one of the silver-armored soldiers shouted. "Grghh." Gaia growled as she picked herself up. Calubra stood up, grabbing the wall for her support. Once the dwarves realized what just happened, Godun tried to reach for the weapon. However, a silver-armored soldier dashed at the dwarf, grabbed him by the dwarf's collar, and threw him aside to the other end of the hall. "Bastard." Bufug unsheathed his dagger and tried to cut open the soldier, who threw away his partner. Rage blinded Bufug, preventing him from seeing the power gap between them. Each silver-armored soldier was at the soul refining stage. Only the red orc was powerful enough to fight them beside Gaia. But she tried to formulate a plan to escape the auction with the weapon. Boom! The silver-armored soldier went flying onto the wall. Finally, the red orc walked out from the cloud of dust and threw away the soldier like he was nothing. With the orc's size and strength, the silver-armored soldiers stood no chance. At least that's what would have happened if the silver-armored soldiers were alone. "Arg!" the red orc roared. His shout alone had enough power to destroy the furniture and push everyone back. Bufug wasted no time as he rushed to the weapon. When the dwarf reached the weapon, Gaia thought he would use that to kill the silver-armored soldiers. However, she was surprised when the dwarf opened up the way they initially came from by pushing a button hidden on the floor. The floor was just a few seconds away from opening, and letting the dwarf run away with the weapon. Poor dwarf didn't expect a light beam to strike him from above and throw him off balance. Gaia sensed a powerful being near her. And it wasn't the red orc who was just a few inches away from ripping off a silver-armored soldier's head. Another beam of pure white light struck the ground beside the red orc. The force knocked back the orc, saving the silver-armored soldier. Then, another figure slowly descended to the hall through the hole they blasted, covered in dazzling bright light. Gaia's heart pounded against her chest when she saw Noah Winston. As usual, he wore pure white robes, and his raven-black hair fluttered in the wind. His eyes glimmered with calm and serenity. Since Noah was just as famous as the Dark Lord himself, everyone recognized him almost immediately. It had been some time since Gaia met Noah in person. Some kind of bad luck put Gaia in the same room as the Supreme Guardian himself. "Stand down, everyone." Noah's dominant voice swept across the hall. He completely ignored the red orc and announced, "We are here for the dwarves and the prototype. Stand down, and this will be over before you know it," said Noah. He was just as calm as Gaia remembered him. That was one of the few traits Noah and Michael had in common. Both of them would remain calm in situations where most others would completely lose their minds. The red orc was far from listening to Noah and surrendering. Instead of backing off, the red orc made the mistake of thinking he could take on Noah since they were both at the fusion stage. A typical human at the fusion stage would lose the fight against the red orc, not Noah. He was anything but typical. With his big fists cupped, the red orc threw a punch, aiming for Noah's head. Noah waited till the last moment, and blocked the red orc's fist with his palm. The ground beneath the orc cracked like an egg when Noah blocked his punch. Before the orc could retaliate, Noah twisted the orc's fist, pulled him closer, and punched him in the chest with enough force to send the red orc flying like a wooden dummy. The other orcs immediately ganged up on Noah and dashed at him from all directions. Noah reacted by stomping the ground with his right foot, creating a shockwave that knocked down the orcs off balance. Then Noah simply raised his hand as a beam of bright light shot out from his palm and hit an orc right in the chest. The orc cried out in pain before losing consciousness. One by one, Noah knocked out every single orc before their leader could get back to his feet. For a big brute, the red orc was quick to get back to his feet. He simply brushed off the dust from his shoulder and cracked his big neck. "You are making a mistake, human," the red orc talked in his gruff voice. "You already made one," said Noah. "My lady, the Guardians has blocked all the exits. They got this whole place surrounded." Gaia heard Arya through the earpiece. "I still have the teleportation scroll. Don't worry about me. Get your team and get out of here," Gaia whispered. "But Dash, it's an order," Gaia interrupted Arya before she could finish her sentence. Meanwhile, the red orc prepared to battle Noah once again. But this time, he decided to use spells instead of brute force. The orc's eyes shimmered with a strange green glow, just like his veins. It didn't feel like the orc was using only celestial energy to Gaia. Something was amiss. Soon, a thick layer of emerald formed upon the orc, covering him like well-forged armor. The red orc moved toward Noah step by step. Each step he took shook the ground and made the ceiling more unstable. Gaia feared the theater might come falling down on their heads any second. But neither the orc nor Noah seemed to care about the building's structural integrity. "Grab the dwarves and secure the weapon and the bitters. I will deal with him," Noah said to his men. Unlike the orc, he didn't cast any spells or equip any armor. Instead, he waited for the orc to make his first move. Finally, the orc rushed at Noah with his fists raised high. "My lady, I don't think we can take the weapon anymore. Just please get out of there. We will figure something out later," Gaia heard Azazel. He was worried, and that wouldn't happen so often. If he was worried, Gaia could tell how bad her situation was. Chapter 8:29 The Power of Locking Out Cultivation. The red orc punched into his fist while cracking his neck. He was ready to give Noah a beat down to death. Facing the big brute orc, Noah remained calm. He didn't even cast a spell. Instead, Noah waited for the red orc to arrive to him. "We are leaving." The golden-haired man tried to leave the hall, only to get halted by the silver-armored guardians. These soldiers surrounded everyone to interrogate them later. It would only take a second for Gaia to use the teleportation scroll to escape. However, he couldn't leave the place without finding the real weapon. Kidnapping the two dwarves seemed to be the only option at that moment. Except, the dwarves were already under the control of the silver-armored guardians. Gaia dared not to reveal her identity when Noah was right there in the room with her. Gaia waited for the right moment to strike. Meanwhile, the red orc almost reached Noah. When they had just a meter distance between them, the orc dashed at Noah with his fist aimed at Noah's head. Noah just moved his body to the side without moving his feet. The orc's fist brushed past his face, barely missing his nose by an inch. Then Noah grabbed the orc's wrist, placed his hand on the orc's chest and boom. A bright beam of light shot out from Noah's palm, sending the orc flying yet again. This time, the orc crashed onto the wall, creating an orc-sized hole in it. Fumes radiated from the orc's chest as Noah's palm got imprinted on his chest. After the orc hit the wall, the entire hall trembled. "Stay down." Noah's voice swept across the hall. The red orc did the exact opposite of what just Noah said and got back to his feet. He clubbed his own chest like a pissed-off gorilla before running toward Noah with his eyes burning in rage and violence. Keeping his focus on the orc, Noah kicked a piece of stone crumb down from the ceiling toward the orc. It was heavy as hell, and if a commoner tried to kick it, every bone in their feet would just snap like a twig. But when Noah kicked it, the stone piece flew like a football and hit the orc right in the head before the orc could defend himself. The orc was stunned for a few moments. Utilizing this opportunity, Noah dashed at the orc, leaped into the air, and kicked the orc with his knees. "Arg!" the orc growled, stumbling backward. Noah hovered in the air and fired a strong beam of light that knocked down the orc to the ground. On the ground, the red orc struggled and growled in pain. Then Noah landed straight down on the orc's chest, breaking a couple of the orc's ribs in the process. Although Noah and the orc were at the fusion stage, Noah was far stronger than the orc. He was a god after all. Compared to Michael, Noah had a different path to godhood and possessed different powers. Still, as a god of light, the light beam coming through the hole above them strengthened Noah. Plus, Noah spent a nice chunk of his time honing his battle prowess. Noah stomped the orc with his knee, making the orc cough out blood. He punched the orc repeatedly until the orc's body radiated a glow from within. Suddenly, an explosion went off around the orc. The hall trembled once again as Gaia grabbed the pillar beside her to steady herself. Then, she noticed Noah crashing onto the rubble nearby. The red orc jumped back to his feet. To her surprise, the orc was on fire. He was literally on fire. However, the fire did not hurt the orc. Rather, the crimson red draped on the orc's skin like another set of armor. Before Noah could get back to his feet, the orc readied his hand, sending a stream of scorching hot flames. The curtains around them immediately caught on fire. Soon, the fire spread like wildfire, engulfing everything around them. On the other hand, a wall of ice appeared in front of Noah and protected him from the orc's fire. Ice and fire collided, creating a misty vapor around them. Coupled with the smoke, the mist made it impossible to see a thing in the room. Luckily, it worked in Gaia's favor. She closed her eyes, spreading her senses around. There they are. Gaia located the two dwarves. She sneaked toward the dwarves while Noah was occupied with the orc. You want the dwarves? Gaia's heart skipped a beat when she heard the orc's gruffy voice. She thought the orc was talking to her. But luckily, these words were meant for Noah. She hastened her steps, only to see another orc stumbling toward the two dwarves under the silver-armored soldier's hold. For some reason, her instincts screamed at her. Her legs moved without her control and leaped backward, putting some distance between herself and the dwarves. When she leaped away, she heard another explosion. Something splashed onto her face as she touched the drop of liquid trickling down her cheek. Blood. Gaia saw drops of blood on her hand. Gaia heard another scream that sounded as loud as a banshee's cry. It sounded like the human woman accompanied the golden-haired man. The orc who approached the dwarves, the explosion and the scream followed by it made Gaia question what just had happened. They are gone. The orc laughed like a devil. As soon as Noah heard the words, the wall of ice before him shattered. The icy shards flew in every direction, impaling wherever they came into contact. Then, a powerful gust of wind shot out of Noah, clearing the mist around them as well as swaying the flame until Noah reached the orc. Killing intent skyrocketed from Noah, seeing the bits of pieces of the dwarves and the silver-armored soldiers. Even the well-forged armor was broken into pieces by the orc, who self-exploded, killing the two dwarves. Noah knew the orcs were dangerous, but never anticipated them to self-explode. Both Noah and Gaia were speechless. But for now, Noah had to put an end to the red orc before more and more people died. Since the dwarves exploded along with the orc, Gaia had to change her plans. The two dwarves were the only ones who could have led her to the real weapon. So she turned her focus to the weapon itself. If she could transport it to the dark ocean somehow, she could ask Michael's help in tracking down or building a new one altogether. But stealing the weapons under the Guardian warship and Noah was not a small feat one by one. The orcs who got knocked out by Noah stood up. Their eyes glimmered with the same emerald green glow she saw in the red orc's body. One of the orcs rushed to the weapon. After the explosion went near it, the weapon was covered in blood and looked a bit dented. The orc turned the weapon, focusing its mouth on Noah. He was ready to use the weapon to kill Noah. The plan was indeed a good one. Unfortunately, Noah couldn't be killed with typical mortal weapons, according to Michael. The red orc quickly tried to cast a spell and dash out of the weapon's range. Yet he failed as a white sword came out of nowhere and impaled him through his chest. Arg! The orc groaned. After the sword stabbed him, the fire around the orc vanished into thin air. A sudden explosion of energy sent everything and everyone flying. Even Gaia collided against the wall and felt weak just for a brief moment. Even though she had enough strength to get back to her feet, she chose to lie on the ground as everyone else had been groaning and rolling on the ground. They looked worse. Calibra, who was behind a broken table, looked pale, groaning in pain and trying to get back to her feet. At that moment, when Gaia thought Noah was about to finish the red orc, he did something unimaginable. Noah raised his hand and fired a bright beam of light at the weapon itself. Boom! Gaia almost shouted as the weapon exploded into bits and pieces. The orc who stood behind crashed onto the wall behind him and hit the ground unconscious. What did you do? The red orc gasped. He couldn't believe Noah had just destroyed the weapon. Everyone, including Gaia, thought Noah was here to bring the weapon to the guild along with the dwarves. They were proven wrong by Noah. The red orc's eyes widened in complete shock. He wanted to kill Noah more than anything. One could see the rage and killing lust in his eyes. Grrh! The orc growled when Noah twisted the sword's hilt in the orc's chest. You are coming with me, Saravar, said Noah. The orc struggled to raise his hands as Gaia noticed a strange glow on the center of Noah's forehead. Soon, he cupped the orc's head as a beam of light shot out of Noah's forehead and penetrated the orc's head. This scene reminded Gaia of the time they were in the fire realm. Then Noah used something similar to lock someone's cultivation. She was lucky enough to see that again. Saravar's fusion stage cultivation slowly declined to the point. In a few moments, he became a commoner. He was not even an arch-sensing stage cultivation at that moment. Instead, he was like someone in the southern continent, void of any arch energy in his body. The threat Noah posed for them was the realm. Just like Michael had the power to snuff out someone's soul and absorb it, Noah possessed the power to lock someone's cultivation completely. Gaia's neck hair stood up, seeing the orc mumble like a crazy person. Every fiber in her body told her to get out of the place immediately. After all, she had no reason to stick around. The dwarves were dead, and the prototype was in bits and pieces. So if she wasted any more time in the same room with Noah, the Supreme Guardian, she would be in deep trouble. The last thing Gaia wanted for Michael was to devise a plan to infiltrate the Guardians and rescue her. Without a second thought, Gaia took out the teleportation scroll and used it. Noah suddenly turned his gaze toward the place where Gaia was, and sensed the space being distorted. Yet the person who used the teleportation scroll was no longer there. Who was that? Noah heard Andreas' voice in his head. "We will know soon enough," said Noah. Chapter 830 The Mind Behind Death Kiss Crossbows. A few days before the auction at Embercrest Entertainment District, in a dimly lit cozy room, Noah sat behind a table, almost buried in scrolls and parchments. Most of them thought being a Supreme Guardian was just hanging around and barking orders. However, the real deal was way different. Noah spent most of his time rummaging through ancient texts, parchments, and scrolls to find out more about the gods and the god-killing weapons. After scouring the entire Azer continent, Noah found some texts indicating a great war between the gods. Some of the gods who led the war against what they called corrupted ones, forged weapons capable of killing corrupted ones as well as themselves. Somehow, Lady Qingjiu got hold of the texts on how to forge these weapons and forged 7 arrows with her friends' help to kill the Dark Lord. The only problem was she forged replicas of these arrows and scattered them throughout the world to confuse the Dark Lord. Noah found 6 of these replicas, and he only had 1 real arrow. He was neck-deep in searching for these arrows until his mother, Diana, ordered him to return home and attend Catherine's baby shower. If that wasn't enough, Noah received disturbing reports that Han-Torum dwarves had built a weapon capable enough to cause mass destruction. So now, Noah had to attend the baby shower, search for the arrows and deal with the dwarves. Noah. The door slowly creaked open, revealing Alicia's perfect slender figure. She gracefully strolled into the room with an alluring smile. "What is it?" Noah raised his head, and was stunned by the beauty of his wife. She looked angelic in the cable light, making his heartbeat rise. As much as Noah liked to focus on the ancient texts, his wife looked too beautiful for him to ignore. He stood up from his chair and stepped closer to her. "Is it me or you look gorgeous today?" asked Noah as he slowly wrapped his arm around Alicia's slender waist. "I think you're being extra cheesy right now." Alicia chuckled but didn't wiggle herself out of his hold. Instead, she moved closer. They could feel each other's warm breath. Their noses brushed together as Alicia's cheeks slowly turned rosy red. "Hammond is waiting for you downstairs. You should meet him," said Alicia. "Did you have any problem rescuing him?" asked Noah. Ever since Alicia had a close encounter with Ghost, Noah had been keeping an eye on Alicia. She was one of the lucky ones who messed with the Dark Lord and lived to tell tales. Unfortunately, the same couldn't be said for Peter. What happened to Peter was indeed tragic, and Alicia was partially blamed for his death. Even some of the Belafort family members blamed Alicia for Peter's death, and didn't dare to speak against Ghost, who actually killed him. It was easy for them to hate Alicia than speak a word against the Dark Lord. Like it or not, Alicia made an enemy out of Ghost, and Noah would do anything to keep her safe from him. That was the reason why Noah avoided sending Alicia to dangerous missions. "No. But if I didn't know you better, I would say you are trying to keep me away from him. You know his people are everywhere," said Alicia. "That's because corrupting and buying people is easier than we think. I cannot do this without you, Alicia. You won't lose me, Noah. I am not going to go behind your back and try to track down the Dark Lord anymore. But remember your promise. You have to avenge my brother. When the time comes, you need to put those arrows in him and end this play once and for all," said Alicia. Noah shared everything with Alicia except the fact there were replicas of the arrows, which held no power. "I will stop him one way or another." Noah still had second thoughts about killing the Dark Lord. Something deep down blocked Noah from wanting to kill Ghost despite everything he had done. But Noah knew one day, when he and Ghost meet on a battlefield, one of their deaths would be inevitable. I will hold you to your words. Now go. Alicia gave Noah a peck on the cheek before wiggling out of his hold. Then, Noah walked out of the room, climbing down the stairs to meet Hammond. After climbing down the redwood stairs, Noah came before a door flanked by silver-armored guardians. Supreme Guardian. The soldiers bowed toward Noah as they opened the door for him. Inside the room, a scrawny young man wearing round glasses was walking back and forth. Anyone could tell the young man was nervous judging by how much he sweated and trembled. The young man was tall, thin, and had curly, messy brown hair. He had an aura of intelligence and genius around him. If the Hontorum dwarves knew the young man was here in the Winston Manor, they would storm the place without a second thought. This young man was their goose that lays golden eggs. Granted, the dwarves were talented blacksmiths and builders, but none of them came close to Hammond. The dwarves hated Hammond's intelligence and the fact he was a human. Every weapon the dwarves built for the last 2 years was not theirs to begin with. They belonged to Hammond. He designed them while the dwarves just built them according to Hammond's specifics. You must be Noah Winston, Hammond said, trembling nervously. I am Hammond Beltro. You must know that. I am sorry. How could you not? You are the Supreme Guardian. You know everything. Hammond blabbered nonstop as Noah patted him on the shoulder with a smile to calm him down. Relax. Take a deep breath. You are safe here. Okay. Oh, stop talking and start breathing. Ooh-ah-oh-oh-ah. Hammond started to inhale heavily and exhale as Noah led him to the wooden table. He made Hammond it on, and he sat on the other facing Hammond. I hope your journey here was pleasant, except for the part where we had to break down your place and knock out a few dwarves. Sorry about that. Well, I am thankful for your rescue. Those dwarves were crazy. I've been held hostage for 2 long years, Hammond stuttered. Noah felt bad for Hammond and wished he had learned about him sooner. I never wanted my inventions to be used as weapons. But all that the dwarves wanted was more weapons. Weapons that could destroy the elves and their precious empire. Hammond began to blabber once again as Noah flicked his wrist, retrieving a pale yellow pill from his space ring. Here, take this. It will calm your nerves and help you dash. Noah didn't even finish his sentence when Hammond snatched the pill and swallowed it like a hungry puppy. The pill melted down into Hammond's mouth and in a few seconds, his face regained the natural rosiness. He seemed more relaxed, loosened up, and stopped shaking. What can you tell me about this new weapon the dwarves have been bragging about? Noah asked Hammond. It is not a weapon, Hammond raised his voice. He genuinely seemed angry and upset that Noah thought his invention was a weapon. I am sorry. It is okay, Noah calmed him down. Tell me more about it so I can stop the dwarves before they auction your invention to the highest bidder. That cannot happen. You have to stop it. You must stop it. Noah was surprised that Hammond had started to sweat and tremble again, regardless of the pill he just took. It meant one thing: Hammond was so close to having either a heart attack or a panic attack. Therefore, Noah had to give him another pill to calm his nerves. Just like before, Hammond devoured the second pill in a blink of an eye. My inventions are not weapons. They are meant to help people who cannot use fancy-mancy magic stuff. Do you know how hard it is for us, those who cannot cultivate to higher stages, to get simple tasks done? Hammond questioned Noah. Gods played a cruel trick on Hammond's life, by giving him over-the-top intelligence to build almost anything, and taking away his ability to cultivate. He was just at the arch-sensing stage 5, and there was no possibility for Hammond to level up. The only good thing that happened in Hammond's life was he ended up in the Empress' many orphanages throughout her empire. He grew up with elves and other orphan humans. It was in the orphanage where Hammond learned to build, design, and nurture his talents. Once he reached the age of 13, Hammond built simple devices for the Empress army and earned enough coins to travel the world as he had always dreamed of. At that time, no one fully realized Hammond's talents. I built everything to help people, not harm them, Hammond stuttered. I understand. A sword can be used to cut weeds and heads. It depends on who holds it. I have no doubt you didn't want to harm anyone. But those dwarves, they are organizing a backside auction to sell your latest invention to the highest bidder. Hammond sighed heavily. It was meant to send messages across kingdoms and even continents using energy waves. At least, that's what I designed it for initially until the dwarves forced me to make some terrible changes. You know, the dwarves see destruction in everything. They are consumed by their hatred toward the elves. As much as I'd like to hear more about your invention, I want to know more about what kind of changes you made and what it could do. Hammond hesitated for a moment. He opened and closed his mouth. You have to tell me. We still have time to fix this, Noah reassured Hammond. And when Hammond looked like he was about to give Noah a lecture on the intricacy of his invention and all the scholarly stuff, Noah rephrased his words. Use simple terms, okay? I am not a brainiac like you. How do I put this simply? Hammond rubbed his chin, simplifying everything in his mind so Noah could understand. After a brief moment of pondering, Hammond finally constructed his sentence. The device I built, it could destroy anyone's organs inside if they were exposed to the energy waves long enough. No defense spell or runes will save you. These energy waves will ignore everything and melt your organs inside. Chapter 831 On to destroy the weapon, despite energy shields and defense spells? Asked Noah. Yes. Nothing would save you. Those energy waves go through anything, including your shields, spells, and anything for that matter. Hammond's answer stunned Noah. If what Hammond said was true, which Noah believed to be true, the harm the device could do was unimaginable. Because of the spells and cultivation stages, a group of people in the lower stages of the cultivation wouldn't go to war against stronger cultivators. At the end of the day, these cultivation stages kept the world peace in a delicate balance. However, this device would change it forever. Suppose someone had mass-produced this device and sold it like typical swords and weapons, cultivation stages wouldn't stop people from going to war against the strong. While the strong could retaliate against and when powerful cultivators fought, it was the commoners and the world that suffers the most damage. The dwarves finished building the device a month ago and forced me to build a prototype to show others what it could do, said Hammond. Where is this device of yours? It's not mine. Not anymore. Mine doesn't kill people. They forced me to change my device to something else. Noah. I mean Supreme Guardians, once the dwarves sell it to the highest bidder, there is no stopping them from mass-producing it. I designed it to be built with common materials and easy to produce for the sake of the poor. Noah rubbed his temples as it turned out to be a bigger problem than he initially thought. He couldn't help imagining the device in the hands of the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord was already rapidly growing in terms of power, influence, and number of soldiers in his army. Once the Dark Lord got hold of the weapon, the advantage the Great Eight clans had would become a thing of the past. Tell me, Hammond, Noah leaned forward. Do you think your device could kill a half-immortal or people above it? Hammond went silent for a moment to think about Noah's question. To be honest, Hammond didn't think who was the strongest his device could kill as much as he thought how far his device could send messages. Theoretically, it's possible. You know, after you reach the half-immortal stage, your body goes through changes both physically and mentally. I haven't seen the dwarves putting a half-immortal against their weapon, but with enough resources, time and talent, they could modify it to be effective against half-immortals too. It is possible. Oh God, what have I done? Hammond gasped and stuttered, realizing the potential threat his invention could cause. Time, resources, and talent are what the dwarves have in abundance, Noah sighed. Listen to me, Supreme Guardian. You have to find it and destroy it. Don't think of using it against the Dark Lord or his army. Nothing good will come from that. Noah wasn't sure of that, but he made no promise to Hammond. Instead, he questioned Hammond. Let's just say I find it and destroy it as you said. What's stopping the dwarves from building the weapon again from scratch? Asked Noah. The dwarves may haven't designed the weapon, but they built it with their own hands. If Noah's experience with dwarves was anything, he knew they could build the weapon later on. My blueprints. They have them in a secured safe with the weapon itself. If you destroy those, the dwarves won't be able to build it again. It's too complex for them to build it again using guesswork. Where is it? Asked Noah, to see Hammond shake his head. I only knew it was somewhere in Dalgarum. They didn't give me a room with windows to see what was going on outside. I was a prisoner to them. A few minutes later, Alicia and Norvin entered the room with the map of Dalgarum. They placed the map on the table between Noah and Hammond. Hammond, you are going to help us locate the weapon and the blueprints. Let's begin with the size of the weapon, said Noah. How big is it? Can you fit in a room? Hammond shook his head. More like you need a hall, a spacious one at that. Like a throne hall, said Hammond. Noah picked up the quill, drenched it in ink, and circled a few areas in the map. They all had paces which had halls big enough like a typical throne hall. Norvin's brows arched up, seeing Noah had actually circled the Dwarven King's palace itself. What's the size of the prototype you mentioned that the dwarves built? It's smaller compared to the real thing. The last time I saw it, it was the size of a carriage. Noah rubbed his clean-shaven chin. They couldn't have openly transported through the stress. Our men would have noticed it. They must have used the underground tunnels. Dalgarum had more underground tunnels than the hares in Norvin's true form. When the dwarves were at war with the elves several hundred of years ago, they built these tunnels to transport weapons and men, avoiding the elven eyes. Then after the war ended, they used these tunnels to transport goods throughout the kingdom. With time, many of the underground passages got forgotten, and their maps just disappeared. However, the rumor was the Han Torum still possessed the full map of the underground passage. With a flick of his wrist, Noah took out a translucent parchment and placed it above the Dalgarum map. The candlelight illuminated the various webs of lines running throughout the kingdom. Is that what I think it is? Norvin's eyes widened in shock. Yes. Every dwarf indeed has a price, said Noah. Obviously, he was not proud of bribing a dwarf, but he had no choice. Unfortunately, it wasn't gold coins he used to bribe the dwarf but a favor. So when the time came, Noah had to repay the favor. Noah felt the price was worth it if he could stop a mass destruction weapon from falling into the wrong hands. After Noah placed the underground tunnel map on the Dalgarum map, he noticed several tunnels running beneath the area he had circled previously. A smile merged with Noah's smile as he figured out the place where the dwarves were holding the weapon. He knew the dwarves were holding an auction in the entertainment district in Embercrest. Since the prototype was the size of a carriage, he established that they had to move it through the tunnels. And only one circled place was connected to the theater through a tunnel, the shipyard. You said your room had no windows, right? Have you noticed metal rust quickly in your room? Asked Noah, although he knew what would be Hammond's answer. Bow that you ask me, yes. The dwarves mostly used wood, but when my inventions required the iron, and they indeed rusted a bit sooner than I used to. That was because you were close to the ocean, said Noah. Realization hit Hammond as he figured out why the dwarves were so adamant about moving the weapon to a safer environment. As much as Hammond knew his inventions, he lacked the people skills to read people and predict their behavior like Noah. Norvin, gather the team and tell them we are moving out in 10 minutes, Noah ordered Norvin. He then turned his gaze toward Alicia. Keep him safe. As far as the dwarves are concerned, Hammond died in the accident. To the rest, Hammond doesn't exist. No matter what, the Dark Lord or his army cannot learn we have him. The moment Hammond heard Noah mention the Dark Lord, he shuddered. You think the Dark Lord might target me? Why? Oh my God, what did I do? Shit. Hammond collapsed on the chair behind him. He sweated bullets as his entire body trembled uncontrollably. Shit, he is having a panic attack, Alicia coldly said. Norvin was actually surprised that even a hostage like Hammond had heard about the Dark Lord enough to have a panic attack when he learned the Dark Lord might target him. It was quite shocking for Norvin to see people pissing their pants just by the mere mention of the Dark Lord's name. After Ghost revealed himself as the Dark Lord and destroyed the entire island of Ithilien, some people refused even to address him by his name, Ghost. More and more people were joining in this fear parade and addressing him only as the Dark Lord. Even some of the Guardians weren't an exception to this. Noah immediately tossed the pill into Hammond's mouth and calmed his nerves. 3 pills, Noah used 3 pills, and they were quite powerful. Still, Hammond took them like candies. Relax, take a deep breath, Noah slowly said to Hammond. We will keep you safe. He won't get to you because he doesn't know you exist. Besides, he is in the demon's grave. So you are safe here. Noah's words somehow calmed Hammond. He had that certain effect on people since he was the god of light. His aura could bring hope and calmness to everyone, Just like Michael's aura could bring our fear and hopelessness. You will soon be relocated to one of our safe houses, and no one will ever bother you again. You will be able to work on your inventions that make the world a better place, not weapons to do the opposite. You have my word, Noah promised Hammond. Alicia knew most of the Guardians, and even Andreas would disagree with Noah. Instead of wasting Hammond's talents inventing things that helps the commoners, they would prefer building new, more powerful weapons that could give them an edge in the fight against the Dark Lord. A world without the Dark Lord was a better world for everyone, including commoners. But Noah did not think like that. He knew any weapon they created with Hammond's talents would eventually land in the wrong hands, especially when people were so easy to bribe and blackmail. Noah did not want to take that chance. After calming down Hammond and leaving him with Alicia, Noah, and Norvin left the room and returned to Noah's room. Next stop, the shipyard in Dalgarum, said Noah before activating the teleporter array in his room. Chapter 832 Noah's reluctance to capture the Dark Lord. After leaving the Winston Manor via a teleportation array, Noah appeared in an empty room lit with candles. This was one of the Guardian Guild's safe houses in Dalgarum. The Guardian Guild had safe houses everywhere except in the Dark Ocean, obviously. A circular chakra with countless intricate runes and symbols glowed underneath Noah's feet. He stepped out of the chakra as his team appeared in the room one by one. "Everyone is here," said Norvin. He quickly transformed into his true form and leaped onto Noah's shoulder. Dark curtains blocked the sunlight from entering the room. Noah went to the windows and slightly moved it to see the ocean through the glass. The crystal blue ocean stretched endlessly into the horizon. Everywhere he looked, the dwarves littered the complexly planned streets. This complexity was about to make Noah's life much easier. Since it was still midday, most of the dwarves were at their work and not terrorizing the streets. "What's the plan, Supreme Guardian?" Neela, a fledgling guardian, asked Noah. She was one of Noah's elites handpicked to be on his team. The 12 guardians in the room served and answered only to Noah. They might not be as strong as the Alpha Guardians or many in the guild, but each of them was loyal, incorruptible, and upheld the Guardian Guild's morals like their lives depended on it. To fight evil and win against corruption, Noah needed more than cultivation power. He needed soldiers with morals. He planned to make them the next generation of great elders who fought beside Andreas. Of course, Noah had the option to resurrect the elite elder guardians with the keys scattered throughout the world. However, Noah avoided searching for the keys regardless of Andreas' words. Because lately, Noah and Andreas had more disagreements and arguments than usual. Noah didn't want the elder guardians to join Andreas and sway him to do something he was against. Besides, Noah barely had enough time to search for the arrows Chinjo forged. Unlike Michael, Noah preferred to get things done with his own hands instead of sending the guardians. Nothing too complicated. Hit the shipyard, find the weapon the dwarves built and the blueprints, destroy them, and get out of there before Han Torum learns we were there. Noah simplified the plan. Hearing his plan, Neela removed the silver helmet, revealing her squared face with fiery red hair. Freckles spread around her nose and cheekbones like sprinkles on a cake. They added an extra layer to the red-haired beauty. Although she was nowhere close to Zanali or Alicia in terms of beauty, Neela had a warrior spirit that Noah admired. She was a valuable asset and a good friend to him. "But Supreme Guardian, are we going to destroy the blueprints alone or the weapon too?" asked Neela. The silvered armored soldiers focused on Noah, waiting for his answer. Instead of giving them a quick answer, Noah looked at the blue ocean through the window. He focused on the rhythmic waves to achieve a sense of peace both physically and mentally. Both. If we take this weapon, someone else will create a countermeasure. It would eventually lead them to build a more powerful weapon. Then another countermeasure and another more powerful weapon. Eventually, it will become a cycle until we have nothing but wars on our hands. It might sound dramatic in my imagination at this point, but I promise you it will happen, Noah explained to Neela, paused for a moment, and continued. I don't think the Dark Lord will destroy the weapon. In fact, he will use it against us in a heartbeat, said Norvin, resting upon Noah's shoulder. Exactly my point. I am not him, and we won't use such a brutal killing machine against anyone, including the people in his army. They deserve punishment, not death, said Noah. Can I speak my mind, Supreme Guardian? Asked Neela. Noah nodded. He always allowed his team to speak freely and listen to them instead of outright shutting them down. Noah believed to be an effective team, communication was vital. When the final war with the Dark Lord arrives, people will die, Supreme Guardian. Both sides will suffer casualties. Deaths are inevitable. This weapon might be the edge we need against the Dark Lord. Wars are won by soldiers, not by weapons. If you believe in a weapon more than yourself, you need to re-evaluate yourself. Noah said calmly about what he truly believed in. Before we leave, when are we going to address the elephant in the room? Norvin turned his gaze toward Noah. What? Asked Noah. We never talked about the Dark Lord knowing about the auction. We knew Valmos went missing, presumably dead, who had supposedly received an invitation to participate in the Hontorum auction. And we never found the invitation on his body. You and I both know Gaia written all over the dead bodies, said Norvin. If she killed them, there is a good chance she would attend the auction, Supreme Guardian. We can nab Saravar and the Dark Queen herself. 2 birds in 1 stone, Neela suggested, but Noah brushed it off with a smile. Just imagine what Ghost would do if we captured his love of life. Just imagine. Norvin closed his eyes for a moment and only saw death and destruction. Fear crept down Norvin's spine, just imagining the Dark Lord bringing his wrath, as Noah said. Not to mention it's Gaia we are talking about. If capturing her was that easy, Zanali and Nagaland would have done it by now. Until I am certain something could hold either of them, I am not going to risk trying to capture them. It has only led to death. This was the biggest reason why Andreas and Noah had such arguments lately. On the one hand, Noah believed it was not wise to try to capture the Dark Lord without finding a way to hold him down. On the other hand, Andreas argued that the more they leave the Dark Lord alone, the stronger he would become and the harder it would be to capture him later. In a sense, both of them were right. Even Skyhall was dumbstruck after Michael escaped the cage that was designed to keep him restrained. Not only did he escape, but he also killed Peter inside the very cage that Alicia put him in. Every time they tried to capture him, they ended up with more blood on their hands. Hence, Noah decided to let the Dark Lord be until he finds a way to stop him permanently. Enough talking. Let's go and finish the task at our hand. Noah waved his hands as he prepared to leave the room. When he talked about the Dark Lord and Gaia, he noticed a sliver of fear in everyone's eyes, including Norvin's. That fear was the Dark Lord's most powerful weapon, and Noah knew he must find a way to break this fear. As long as the people feared the Dark Lord, they would be easy to brainwash and swayed to the dark side. After leaving the safe house, Noah and his team used the dark alleyways to reach the sea without drawing much attention. As Noah stood on golden grains of sand, he looked up at the brilliant sky adorned with dazzling blue color and puffy clouds that formed different shapes in the sky. The goddess-like sun's face was being embraced by the demure navy fingertips of the skyline. The small crystals in the sand glimmered and twinkled brilliantly against the sun rays. Away from the immense sea, white foams from the waves gathered gently onto the golden shore. Every sight and sound stimulated a sense of composure and serenity. The effect was heightened by the absence of the noisy bustle of guardians complaining, rummaging of scrolls, and Andreas lectures, only to be exposed to the never-ending music of the waves, and to breathe the fresh air instead of the stale atmosphere of his room. It was not easy to describe the effect of this sight, but it could only be strangely deciphered in his mind. His team was ordered to equip normal clothes instead of silver armor, which would most definitely draw attention from the dwarves. Eventually, Noah reached the ocean, where he saw a couple of dwarven kids building sand castles. The sight of children playing without a worry in the world warmed Noah's heart. Looking at them made him want to destroy the weapon even more. If the weapon fell into the wrong hands, and they started to slaughter people with it, the blame would ultimately fall on the dwarves. It was not fair to blame all the dwarves for something a few dwarves filled with hatred had done. While Noah was drowned in the serenity of the beach and thoughts, one of the dwarven children noticed Noah. She waved at Noah, showing no hatred and hostility toward humans. This was the world Noah had been trying to create lately, a world without hatred and fear toward one another. In fact, he was more focused on solving disputes between races and helping commoners than dealing with the Dark Lord and his army. Noah waved back at the kid, which brightened the kid's face like someone had lit a candle inside her head. Then before the other kids could notice Noah, he disappeared into the ocean with his team. Instead of going to the shipyard on foot, they decided to go underwater. That way, the element of surprise would be on their side, and they could catch the dwarves before they alert Hontorum. Hammond and the weapons he helped the dwarves build were off-the-books operation. So even if the Guardian Guild infiltrated it and stole the weapon, Hontorum couldn't retaliate directly because such an operation doesn't exist officially. However, Noah planned to keep the guild out of the picture because the last thing he wanted was a cold war between the Guardian Guild and Hontorum. At this point, any conflict the Guardian Guild gets into would benefit the Dark Lord more than anything. Noah and his team were quick swimmers. They managed to reach the shipyard, which was built in the water, in a few minutes. But before emerging from the water, Noah closed his eyes, spreading his senses around the area to locate the dwarves in the shipyard. Having no idea a team of guardians was under them, the dwarves continued with their day-to-day work, which was building ships and a weapon of mass destruction. Chapter 833 The elves did it from a bird's view. The shipyard was built in a way that would look like a giant T. The left side of the shipyard had a frigate almost finished being built, and the other side had a man-o'-war. The dwarves were building these ships under the king's order. Although Hontorum was one of the Great Eight clans, their leader was the king himself, unlike the Guardian Guild, where the leader was no king but was called Supreme Guardian, who answered to no king. Meanwhile, the straight platform stretching toward the ocean contained materials needed to build the ships. It had a warehouse and a giant forge that fumed heat and ash. Noah could hear the dwarves hitting metal with their hammers. Thanks to his senses, he located 6 dwarves on guard. 2 dwarves stood on the shipyard's edge, looking at the ocean. 2 more dwarves patrolled the forge while another 2 dwarves stood on either side of the roof with their crossbows. Noah swam toward a cargo ship docked at the shipyard and slowly emerged from the water. Luckily, the cargo ship was the size of a small fishing ship and had no dwarves on board. It was empty as far as Noah could see. "I count 6 dwarves, Supreme Guardian," Neela whispered after emerging from the water. "No more calling me by my rank or name," Noah said to Neela and the others. "Position yourself to take out the dwarves at the same time. Wait for my signal." "As you wish," Neela said before merging into the water once again. His team was competent, and he didn't need to micromanage them every single time. They coordinated among themselves and positioned them from where they could take out the dwarves with blow darts. These darts were laced with Noah's own concoction, a powerful knockout serum. Since all these dwarves were at the body strengthening stage, they only had to use a small dosage. Is it true the Dwarf King is only a core formation warrior? How could they be one of the Great 8 clans when their leader is just a core formation warrior? Norvin asked Noah. Don't underestimate the dwarves by their weak cultivation power. They substitute that with connections, wealth, and their superior dwarven engineering. Also, have you heard of Moguls, the mercenary guild? The dwarves in there aren't weak. They use some kind of blood ritual to boost their cultivation. While the team was taking their position, Noah discussed the dwarves with Norvin. When it came to what was happening in R, Norvin pretty much had no idea. He was learning the power dynamics and the other racers in R little by little. So Norvin seemed a little ignorant to some in the guild. Noah noticed Neela and his team raising their thumbs, indicating they were in position. They waited for his signal as Noah leaned to the side, taking another look at the dwarves. Then he snapped his fingers, creating a quick flash of light. This flash was the signal. And the moment the team saw it, they raised their blowguns, blew into it, and sent a dart soaring through the air. Ouch! Blimey! One of the dwarves slapped his neck as he felt a sting. But there was something between his hand and neck. The dwarf pulled it out to see a tiny 10-inch arrow made of what seemed to be silver. In a blink of an eye, the serum kicked in as the dwarves rolled their eyes upwards before collapsing down. Move! Noah ordered the team as he leaped out of the water and dashed into the shipyard. Although the shipyard where the dwarves build secret weapons, they didn't put too many dwarves to guard. They believed too many guards would draw unwanted attention to the place. Hence, they had few guards, and they never opened their mouths about the underground facility, even when they were drunk. Their secrecy worked in Noah's favor. Inside the shipyard, he saw countless ship parts and giant chains hanging from the ceiling. Everywhere he turned, he saw nothing but metal, ship parts, wood, and empty mugs. Norvin leaped onto a chain above and looked around the shipyard to locate the underground passage. The dwarves might be drunk and hot-headed but not stupid enough to keep the weapon in plain sight. Norvin's eyes glistened like rubies as he used magical perception to see through the shipyard. Everything seemed normal and not out of place until his gaze fell on a golden train running down from a lever hidden behind a stack of wooden crates. There, Norvin pointed his finger at the wood crates as Noah and the team slowly sneaked toward it. Meanwhile, they noticed a couple of dwarves walking toward them. They fell down as fast as they entered the room. Noah turned and saw Neela with the blowgun. Her reaction was too fast to the point none of her teammates realized that she had just fired 2 blow darts. Noah gave a nod of approval before turning his gaze back to Norvin. "Knock out everyone and meet me down," said Noah. Since Norvin's true form was small, and he could move around the shipyard without getting detected, Noah tasked Norvin with knocking out the dwarves. Even if he somehow got caught, the dwarves wouldn't connect this to the Guardians. After all they saw was a monkey. Speaking of being a monkey, Norvin took out a brown pill from his space ring and tossed it into his mouth. As soon as the pill melted down, his golden fur turned mud brown. Without the shiny golden fur, he looked like a regular monkey. "Go ahead," Norvin whispered, turned around and leaped toward the shipyard's left side, where they were building a frigate. "Follow me," Noah said to his team as they slowly sneaked toward the crates. When they reached the stack of crates neatly placed on top of each, Noah slightly moved the stacks. The wooden crates were surprisingly heavy, which made Noah wonder what was inside of them. The crates moved, making a creaking sound. Then the lever was exposed. However, it was not the typical lever that, when pulled down, would open a door. Instead, this lever made of thick, black metal had numerous tiny gears, nuts, and bolts. On top of that, there were 6 keyholes beside the lever. "Should we search those dwarves? They might have the keys," said Neela. Noah nodded as the team swiftly moved away from Noah to search the dwarves. A few minutes later, Neela and the others returned to Noah. Unfortunately, they came empty-handed. "We found no keys, Supreme Guardian. All they had was their swords and mugs." Neela creased her sword-sharp brows. They thought coming here empty-handed would disappoint Noah. On the contrary, he just smiled. Honestly, he expected the dwarves to have some kind of mechanism to protect the entrance. Otherwise, it would be too easy for anyone to enter their secret lair. Fortunately for him, and unfortunately for the dwarves, Noah possessed a primordial flame. Neela's face brightened with the blue flames dancing above Noah's hands. No matter how many times they had witnessed the blue flames, they still had the same dumbfounded look on their faces when Noah conjured the flames for the zillionth time. The flame had a certain effect on the Guardians. The heavenly flames had a radiant energy that made them calm, courageous, and fearless. Under their gazes, Noah moved the ball of heavenly flames toward the lever and let the heat creep into the keyholes. The metal slowly turned blue to the color of the flame. Inch by inch, the heavenly flames melted down the lock, and then the lock clicked. Noah pushed open the door, revealing a dimly lit staircase that led to the dwarven secret lair. But the opening came with a catch. They weren't built with humans and long-legged species in mind. Instead, it was meant for the dwarves to use. Hence, the doorway was only 4 feet tall. Noah crouched down and entered the doorway, followed by his team. They were careful not to make any sounds until they could locate the weapon and the dwarves guarding it. After climbing down almost 50 steep steps, everyone, including Noah, felt a chill running down their spines. Hammond wasn't kidding when he said the weapon was massive in size. It was almost the size of a frigate. Compared to it, the prototype was just a baby. The weapon didn't even need to be powered up. But if someone simply blew into one end, the bell-shaped mouth would amplify the volume loud enough to kill several commoners. "Put on your masks," Noah ordered the team. He saw several dwarves and no way of knocking them out without getting caught. One by one, Noah's team put on a porcelain mask resembling the face of a mannequin. When they wore the masks, their ears grew a few inches outwards, making them look pointy and elven-like. Those who look at Noah's team would immediately believe they were elves wearing masks. The dwarves and elves hated each other for all reasons, and Noah didn't think adding one more to the pile wouldn't make much of a difference. Initially, he considered using black skull masks to portray themselves as the Dark Lord's army. But after thinking of the dwarves' nature of hot-headedness, he immediately removed that idea from his head. Because if the dwarves went against the Dark Lord, he would kill them, and he would reduce their entire clan to the ground without a shred of mercy. Noah slowly walked forward, stretching his arms and neck. "Stop what you're doing, you filthy animals." Noah's thunderous voice swept across the yard. He was quite good at the way elves would speak to the dwarves in a situation like this. The dwarves almost jumped from their feet when they heard the sudden voice. They immediately jumped down from the weapon, rushed out from the corners, and climbed down through the chains with their battle axes in hand. Bloody elves. The dwarves were more furious than they were shocked. Just the sight of pointy ears made their blood boil. The dwarves didn't even mind the huge cultivation gap between them. That was why the dwarves were often called hot-blooded and borderline stupid when it came to a battle. "Kill those fucking pointy-eared fucks." One of the dwarves raised his battle axe, crying out loud. Chapter 834 Save or destroy the weapon. The dwarves let out a battle cry that echoed through the entire space. They rushed at Noah and his group without regard for their lives. Just the sight of pointy ears in their domain twisted something inside the dwarves. Their killing intent skyrocketed as a dwarf threw his battle axe at Noah. The axe soared through the air, but Noah simply flicked his wrist as the axe froze in the air, turned around, and flew straight back to the dwarf. Only the dwarf couldn't stop the axe. It hit the dwarf straight on the head, knocking him out cold in an instant. Noah's team scattered around the space in a blink of an eye. Each used their own speed spell to enhance their speed to the point the dwarves barely saw them. Wind rustled every time Noah's team ran past them. The previously silent workshop of the dwarves turned into a battle zone. Without being able to see the intruders, the dwarves swung their axes left and right blindly. "Stay still and fight us, motherfuckers. I want them dead." The dwarves screamed as loud as they could. Suddenly, a dwarf froze for a moment before falling down. It happened so quickly. One moment he was fine, and the next, he fell to the ground like a lump of coal. Instead of reaching for their fallen comrades, the dwarves roared at Noah and his team, whom the dwarves couldn't see anymore. "What have you done? You will pay for this." The dwarves boiled in rage as their eyes looked like they were about to pop out of their sockets. Their roars could be heard from anywhere in the space. Soon the dwarves fell one by one. Noah wasn't wasting any more time on the dwarves. He knocked the wind out of many dwarves just with his fists. Eventually, Noah and his team knocked out every dwarf in the hall and gathered before the weapon. "Any idea how to destroy this without making a fuss?" "Too much fuss, I mean," said Neela. "Before we destroy the weapon, look for a safe." "It must be here somewhere," said Noah. Noah's team nodded before heading out to search for the safe, leaving Noah with the weapon. Noah started to walk around the weapon in the hope of trying to get a better understanding of the weapon. He wondered how Hammond came up with such a bizarre contraption to exchange messages between two places without the use of arch energy. As he reached the weapon's back, he noticed a door. Noah twisted the golden knob, opening the door. When the door opened, his face was illuminated by the jars lined up inside. His neck hair stood up due to the electric energy coming from the jars. There were almost 50 jars, and each had balls of lightning inside. Lightning in a bottle. Who would have thought that? Noah smiled. Noah tried to pull out a jar, but they were held in place by a magnetic field. So this is what powers up the weapon. How in the hell did these dwarves manage to catch lightning in bottles? Say whatever about the dwarves, they never ceased to amaze Noah with their innovations. Granted, Hammond was on another level compared to the dwarves, but it didn't mean the dwarves were incompetent. It was just their hatred toward the elves that got the better of them, and forced them to kidnap Hammond. Still, Noah felt like he was missing something in this whole story. He couldn't put his finger into what it was, but his gut told me he was missing something, a crucial piece of the puzzle. While his team was turning the place upside down, searching for a safe, Noah pulled out a jar from the power compartment and put it in his space ring. He had a feeling this might come in handy later. After closing the compartment, Noah continued to walk around the weapon. When he walked a full circle around it, Neela returned to him with a proud grin on her face. "We found it," said Neela. "Lead the way." Noah sighed in relief inside. He was glad everything had gone according to plan till now. The red-haired beauty led Noah to the safe that was located in a small room. When Noah entered the brightly lit room, he was welcomed by a long oak table, chairs tall enough to accommodate dwarves, and numerous racks filled with parchment and scrolls. Whoever occupied the room didn't give a damn about tidiness. Everything was lying around out of order. It would be a miracle if anyone could find something in the room. The parchment and papers on the ground rustled as they entered the room. "There it is." Neela pointed at the safe built inside the wall to Noah. Just like the lever they used to get into this area, the safe had several keyholes as well as tiny gears. If Noah wanted to get the blueprints unharmed, he would have bothered to look for the keys. Since he was here to obliterate the plans, he just went to the safe and sent a stream of heavenly flames into the keyholes. The entire safe melted down like butter in a few moments. Then Noah turned his focus onto the bigger problem, the weapon itself. "How do you plan to destroy it?" asked Neela. "With these," they heard Norvin's voice. When they turned to the doorway, they saw Norvin, walking toward them in his human form. He carried a red oak barrel on his shoulder. "Explosives. I found this in a room. Apparently, it's a new kind of explosive, more powerful and more stable. At least that's what I heard from the dwarves before I knocked them out cold," said Norvin. "Push this baby into the weapon and watch it go kaboom." Problem solved. Norvin placed the barrel heavily on the ground as Noah's team almost leaped out of the room. "I told you. It's stable." "Stop messing around," said Noah with an amused smile. "I will take care of destroying the weapon. You guys go ahead and get the dwarves to safety." "I don't want them to get caught in the blast," said Noah. If it was Michael, he wouldn't have bothered with saving the dwarves. They built weapons to kill people, so they deserved to die. That would have been Michael's argument. Luckily for the dwarves, Noah wasn't a vengeful god like Michael. He was merciful. "I will signal you when we get them to safety," said Norvin before leaving the room with Noah's team. After they left, Noah carried the barrel to the weapon. With a simple leap, Noah reached the weapon's mouth and slowly rolled the barrel down after he attached a rope around the barrel. Noah hovered around the weapon waiting for Norvin's signal. Almost 5 minutes later, Noah heard a roar in the distance. Noah could recognize that roar in his sleep. That was Norvin in his true golden baboon form. Only a few people had seen his true form, which stood 8 feet tall and quite terrifying to look at. "That's my cue," Noah mumbled as he raised a hand toward the roof. Then, a beam of light shot through the roof, creating a hole wide enough for Noah to escape through. He slowly hovered toward the hole with the rope attached to the explosive barrel in his hand. When he was just a few meters away from the hole in the roof, Noah snapped his fingers as sparks flew into the rope. Blue fire immediately engulfed the rope and traveled through the rope like a blue dragon. Eventually, the flame traveled into the weapon, away from Noah's sight. For a few moments, nothing happened. Noah just waited for something to happen in utter silence. The silence only lasted for a few moments, though. Boom. Noah heard the sound of a muffled explosion. In a blink of an eye, fire streamed out of the weapon's mouth, and the weapon exploded into bits and pieces. The sheer force of the explosion alone sent Noah flying directly through the hole. Norvin wasn't kidding when he said the explosive was more powerful. A single barrel was enough to destroy a colossal weapon to pieces and shake the entire building. Noah felt truly lucky that he put the barrel into the weapon instead of making it explode outside it. If that were the case, the explosion would have been several times more powerful and destroyed the entire building along with the adjacent buildings. Dark smoke rose to the sky itself, forming a giant cloud above the building. Noah used the cloud of smoke to his advantage and flew away from the place. While he was flying away, he saw more and more dwarves running toward the fire instead of away from it. He felt pity for the dwarves. But luckily, Noah cleared the building before setting up the explosion. His task here was done without a hiccup. Good thing Andreas used all his soul energy, brewing special potions for Noah. Otherwise, they would have had a huge argument about whether to destroy the weapon or not. By the time the higher-ups from Han Torum appeared at the shipyard, Noah and his team were long gone. All the dwarves they knocked out pointed at one group, the elves. As a result, the Empress would have a long discussion with her ministers and schedule another secret meeting with none other than the Dark Lord himself. Chapter 835 The Inside Man of the Dark Lord. A few days after Noah destroyed the weapon and the prototype, as evening cast her dusky gown, when the air became fresh and restful, the time of joyful reflection arrived. The brightly lit city of Ice Fair met the peach sky. The evening arrived in stately fashion, with all the grace of a breeze in repose. Neela was on her way to meet her friend and fellow teammate, Alvaro Torres. He lived alone in Ice Fair and worked hard to get to Noah's team. The cobblestone pavement was littered with people of all manners. It wouldn't be an understatement to say the Ice Fair was the hub of Kingdom Kethern. People came from everywhere to Ice Fair to enjoy their time and buy rare things. One could argue that Ice Fair was the second safest place after Penn Town, where the Supreme Guardian resided. Neela wore white robes and put on her hood to cover her face. Some unruly hooligans were fighting and rolling on the ground. Neela walked around a cart that barely avoided the two hooligans. She was on her way to Alvaro Torres to talk about collecting information on potential targets who might be helping the Dark Lord. Everyone in Noah's team was ordered to pursue information about the Dark Lord's subordinates in their free time. However, they were strictly ordered against going after them without Noah's permission. Considering Neela was an ambitious girl, she chose the Dark Lord's head of information gathering as her target. Noah and Alicia believed the Dark Lord had someone powerful, connected, and influential working under him, who was responsible for recruiting people into their course as well as gathering information. Neela had a few strong suspects, including Sadie Kaplan, the Silver Moon prodigy. Unfortunately, everyone on Neela's list had higher positions in prominent clans or organizations. Interrogating them without any evidence was equal to killing her own career. That was where Alvaro Torres came into the picture. Alvaro Torres' aunt was an elder in Silvermoon, and Neela hoped to use his aunt to get a meeting with Sadie Kaplan, the most suspicious one on her list. Among the suspects, Sadie Kaplan had the closest relationship with Ghost, and was the most likely candidate who would have been brainwashed by him. After navigating her way through the crowd, she finally arrived at the edge of the city where the nobles tended to live. Bright crystal orbs lit the square with its radiant blue light as Neela turned left and strolled straight into the path that had the sign Torres Manor. Since it was evening and most of the patrons were either drinking in taverns or immersing themselves in pleasuring activities, the path to Torres Manor was void of people. Peach trees accompanied Neela on either side of the path as she enjoyed the calm and peaceful stroll. Soon, she noticed an elegant manor at the end of the road. From the outside, the Torres Manor looked cozy. It was built with walnut wood and has granite decorations. Small, octagon windows added to the overall look of the house, and have been added to the house in a fairly asymmetrical pattern. The manor was shaped like an L. The extension extended into overhanging wooden panels reaching the end of that side of the house. The second floor was bigger than the first, which created a stylish overhang on two sides of the house. This floor had a slightly different style than the floor below. The manor itself surrounded a gorgeous garden with many hidden lights that made the garden come to life at night. As she reached closer to the manor, she noticed two large chimneys sitting at the side of the manor. They fumed gray smoke, which indicated to Neela that Alvaro was home. Neela knocked on the door. "Alvaro." Neela gently tapped the wooden door. She heard a rustling noise coming from within as though Alvaro was rummaging through some parchments. "Did I hear a girl's voice?" Neela questioned herself. She could swear she heard a girl's voice coming from inside, but it couldn't be since Alvaro was single. "Alvaro." Neela knocked again. This time, she added a bit of force. For a few moments, Neela heard nothing. She slowly reached for the dagger dangling underneath her cloak. Even a few moments of silence were enough for fear to creep down their spines. As Supreme Guardian's elites, they didn't have the luxury of taking things simply. The Dark Lord was known to strike when least expecting. So, Neela's heart and mind feared the worst. Luckily, Alvaro put her mind and heart to rest as he opened the door with his usual grin. Alvaro was a brown-haired youngster with a stubble beard. He was neither too tall nor too short, with a medium-built body. While he was not in the silver armor, he used to wear rather ordinary clothes, like black trousers and a loose-fit cotton shirt that revealed his chiseled chest and muscles. "What were you doing in there?" Neela didn't wait for Alvaro to invite her in. Instead, she pushed him aside and let herself in. Once she entered the room, she was greeted with a cozy fireplace, a comfy sofa set, and a puffy carpet that blanketed the wooden floor. "Please do come in." Alvaro rolled his eyes as he shut the door behind them. Neela plunged herself into the sofa and removed the cloak. "I swear I heard a girl's voice in there. Are you hiding one, Alvaro?" Neela teased Alvaro. "Look under the sofa," said Alvaro with a hint of sarcasm in his voice. Neela leaned forward and pretended to look under the sofa. "I bought a crate of ale from embark. You want a mug?" asked Alvaro as he went to the kitchen on the corner. "Where in the hell did you get the time to buy ale from the dwarves?" Neela turned around to see Alavro taking out a jade bottle from a wooden crate and pouring its content into 2 large mugs. The sweet aroma from the ale made her mouth water. Alvaro brought the 2 mugs to the sofa and sat beside her after handing over 1 mug to Neela. "Cheers. We deserve it." Alvaro clanked his mug against Neela's. "Yes, we do indeed. We made quite a mess in Dalgarum. Good thing the dwarves have no idea it was us. They are gonna hate the elves even more now, even though I don't know how they can hate them more," said Neela, taking a long sip from the mug, enjoying every bit of the dwarven brewed ale. Her taste buds danced in her tongue and thanked her wholeheartedly. "I gotta give credit to the dwarves. They do know how to brew good ale. I just wish Grayson was here with us," Neela signed. Grayson was one of the 2 guardians who lost their lives when the orcs self-exploded. If it weren't for the silver armor, more guardians would have lost their lives that day. They felt truly lucky for the armor and the runes engraved in it. To Grayson and Kian, Alvaro raised his mug, toasting for their dead comrades. "And about that favor." Neela's voice trailed off. "It's on. You have been invited to the Silver Moon beverage party thanks to Aunt Tegan. You owe me one, and if you mess this up somehow, you don't know me." Alvaro chuckled. "I want to hug you." "Please don't." Alvaro raised both his hands to defend himself from Neela's hug. "Please remember everyone is innocent until proven guilty. You don't know if Sadie is in bed with him or not." "I will, when I look her in the eyes," said Neela. After some chit-chatting and discussion about their lives, Neela left the manor and headed for her home to get some good night's sleep. It was Noah's new policy to get enough rest and sleep instead of overexerting themselves cultivating. "She is gone," Alvaro said, though his house looked empty. The smile on Alvaro's face disappeared, and instead, a darkened expression occupied his face. A breeze of wind blew past Alvaro as it almost snuffed out the fire and light in the room. Then, a shadow figure dressed in all black emerged from the darkest corner in the house. "Is she going to be a problem?" the dark figure asked Alvaro in a thick, otherworldly voice. Alvaro had a difficult time hiding the fear creeping down his spine. He swallowed mouthful of saliva and managed to turn his gaze toward the dark figure. "No. She is just chasing some leads." "Good. Because if she is a problem, at best, you will hear from Noah Winston." The dark figure paused for a moment, letting the silence sink into Alvaro's mind. "At worst, you will receive a visit from the Dark Queen," said the dark figure. Because of the dark hood covering his head, Alvaro couldn't make out the figure's features. Serving the Dark Lord could be a fruitful endeavor. "He will only ask you for your loyalty. In return, you can get anything in this world," said the dark figure as Alvaro rolled his eyes. "Spare me the sales pitch. What you're doing here is blackmailing. The only reason you are here and I am not at Noah's home is I don't have a choice," Alvaro growled. To Alvaro's surprise, the dark figure chuckled. "Of course you have a choice. You can tell the Supreme Guardian that you feasted on a helpless woman when you weren't supposed to. You can tell him that your lust overshadowed your judgment. I heard your Supreme Guardian is a merciful person. What's the punishment for rape? Castration and lifetime prison? You can ask for forgiveness. You always have a choice." The dark figure amused as Alvaro burned with rage inside. "We will be in touch," the dark figure said, giving no damn about Alvaro's fury. The figure turned around to leave when he looked over his shoulder at Alvaro. "We have eyes everywhere, Alvaro. Engrave that in your mind. I think we both agree you do not want to meet the Dark Queen. You will hear from me soon." As he said, the dark figure disappeared from the room. Alvaro felt sweat beads trickling down his face after the dark figure left. A sin he committed in the shadows came back to haunt him. He thought he escaped the sin, but now he was forced to be the Dark Lord's inside man in the Guardian Guild. Chapter 836 Beast of Itenes. Current day. Michael was on his way to harvest everything he needed to fix the gold coins problem. Taskin and Thilv accompanied Michael as Vidora chose to stay with the tribe because they liked how the wood elves treated them. Almost all the trees had sparkling blue leaves instead of the usual green leaves. Not only the cyan color of the forest, but something fresh in the air that put everyone at ease. Michael felt the forest around him was alive. Any predators around here? Michael asked Taskin and Thilv. Except for the wolves Michael killed at Tar's campsite, Michael met no predatory animals. The rabbits, foxes, and birds Michael saw had sparkling bodies. They glistened under the canopy's shade. They used to be around. Taskin started to answer Michael. But ever since the demons occupied the mother tree, they ran deeper into the forest. This place crawled with all kinds of creatures before they invaded us. You cannot walk a minute in the forest without catching a glimpse of something. Now it feels so void of life, said Taskin. You might meet a few where we are going, my lord, said Thilv. She addressed him as my lord instead of the Dark Lord. Michael grew quite tired of being called the Dark Lord by the elves sooner than he expected. Therefore he ordered them to call him like his subordinates and men my lord. At first, the wood elves seemed reluctant, but after Michael ordered them, they changed how they addressed him. The three of them enjoyed their walk in peace. Instead of bringing a group of elves with him, Michael only brought Thilv and Taskin. This couple seemed competent and knew the forest like the back of their hands. Plus, Michael wanted to know more about the two wood elves. So the humans here worship me or any other god? Asked Michael. We don't know much about them, my lord. They live far, far away from the mother tree. We call them the water tribe, said Thilv. Because they live nearby water? Asked Michael as Thilv nodded. I want to meet them someday before I leave this world. Thilv and Taskin stopped walking when they heard Michael. They turned around, worried. Are you going to leave us, my lord? Thilv's eyes watered. Taskin was actually stunned to see Thilv behave this way in front of the Dark Lord. She was a warrior with an iron heart. She was an alpha of their tribe before he married her. Seeing her show her vulnerable side surprised Taskin. I told you, there is entirely a new world out there where I must be. But fear not, I will visit you often. When the time comes, I will build a gateway connecting the world so people can travel between, said Michael. Speaking of the other world, Michael wondered how to leave this place without using badass points. Somehow Michael believed there was another way to get out of this world. The past Dark Lord may have left something for him since he seemed to leave a lot of things to guide Michael in his path. The God's world? Thilv asked with a completely stunned face. More like a messed up world where I have lots of enemies, Michael chuckled. Jokes aside, I do plan to bring you there. But not before I fix everything here. Clothing, for example, said Michael. My lord, what is wrong with our clothes? Thilv's naive question almost made Michael laugh, but he smiled and gestured at them to lead the way. Almost after 7 hours, the sun slowly descended toward the horizon. One would expect the forest to get dark, but on the contrary, the trees and vegetation around them glowed brighter. The luminescent leaves, mushrooms, and barks lit the forest like neon lights. Michael let Taskin and Thilv take some rest before continuing their journey. He lost track of time as he followed them behind deeper into the forest. Eventually, Michael noticed the veil of mist slowly appearing in his sight. We are getting closer to the spot, my lord, said Taskin. He looked a bit uncomfortable and borderline afraid. They were stranded far away from the mother tree and her protection. Usually, the wood elves would avoid traveling deep into the forest at any cost. All tribe elders prohibited venturing deeper into the forest as they believed it made the wood elves mad. Before we go further, put this on your face. Michael threw them black face masks with filters built within. They looked confused a bit until they saw Michael putting on the mask himself. After they put the masks on, they slowly walked through the fallen logs and knee-high vegetation. The deeper they went, the more they saw reddish leaves and trees instead of the bluish tree. Something turned the trees red, and Michael assumed the same thing that put the creatures to sleep. He looked around the trees and saw various creatures, such as rabbits, foxes, and even a green-furred tiger sleeping on the ground with its bellies up. The tiger purred, sleeping a few meters away from the trio. "Don't make any sudden noise," Taskin warned Thilv as he crouched down to blend in with his surroundings. Michael followed the wood elves, and after a while, he felt like he was back in Demon's Grave where everything had a red hue, like everything was drenched in blood. Not a single sound could be heard in that second. The eerie silence slowly turned into fear and anxiety. If Michael weren't here with them, Taskin and Thilv would have turned around and rushed out of this place instantly. But having their almighty God with them gave them enough courage to continue forward. They slowly walked past the sleeping tiger, and arrived at a small pond. The crystal-clear water reflected the crimson-red surroundings, as well as the silver mushrooms with black stars on them. Michael's eyes lit up as these mushrooms were what he looked for the most. "Pick these mushrooms, as many as you can," said Michael, bent down to pick one from the ground. The silver mushroom let out a cry as though it had a mouth when Michael rooted it out from the ground. These mushrooms grew under the shady roof of the forest, while berries lay ripening under the leafy dome of the forest like jewels. The grass was crispy under their feet. Every tree Michael saw was skyscraper tall. Good thing Vidora wasn't here, or they would have tried to pick and eat the fruits that shone like silver snowflakes. The forest smelled fresh and organic. Even Michael's mask couldn't stop the natural musty smell of forest from penetrating the filters and entering their nostrils. Anyone who didn't know about the forest and the plants would be tempted to pick some wild pears and eat them. However, Michael knew better than to eat anything in the forest around him, because every single tree, fruit, and plant was radiating a poisonous miasma that would put the brain in some kind of coma until they died. The creatures sleeping had developed a partial immune system to avoid death, but they couldn't avoid getting high. Thilv and Taskin followed Michael's hand movement, and rooted out the mushrooms exactly how he did it. They put the mushrooms in a pile, wondering how they were going to bring them to the tribe. While Thilv and Taskin were harvesting the mushrooms, Michael went to the trees with red barks and scraped down the black moth growing on them. Michael hummed a tune of the song he heard back on Earth while collecting the moth in a glass jar. The little alchemist living inside him was utterly delighted to collect new ingredients to brew an entirely new potion that would put a full stop to poverty once and for all. This potion would serve as a new drug that makes people high while not affecting their physical bodies. In other words, by taking this potion, nothing would change physically. The user would only feel mind-numbing pleasure, and high for a short amount of time and crave more. Since Michael was not a drug dealer, he planned to brew an antidote to remove the craving and urge. Moreover, Michael planned to make this potion ridiculously expensive, so that only the rich and noble would be able to afford it. This way, the commoners would be spared by the new sensation drug he was about to make. It was only a temporary measure to enable the coin flow. His end goal was to invest in legit businesses and hotel chains, not dealing drugs. Even the Dark Lord had standards and limits. The last thing he wanted was to have a bunch of druggies roaming the streets of his beautiful world. He blamed Noah for closing down Majestic and Hades, which pushed him to go into the drug industry. As they were peacefully harvesting herbs and various ingredients in the forest, Thilv's ears twitched. She immediately stopped harvesting the mushrooms, turned around, and saw Taskin slowly reaching for his bow. It seemed like he heard the same rustling that she had heard just a moment ago. Taskin and Thilv looked over their shoulder to see Michael calmly walking around picking blueberries. "My lord," Taskin whispered, trying to get Michael's attention. "There is something approaching us." "Yes, I know that," Michael calmly answered Taskin. The brown sack into which Michael put the blueberries disappeared along with the pile of mushrooms on the ground. He then strolled toward Thilv and Taskin. "Stand back. I'll deal with it," said Michael. Unlike the wood elves, Michael was able to see the beast approaching them through his X-ray vision. Thilv and Taskin heard a strange gnawing sound. Soon, their noses twitched as the air began to reek of blood. They tried to see what was happening, but the foliage and the trees blocked their sight. But Michael could see everything. The beast was feasting on the sleeping tiger, which didn't even move an inch. The tiger was too high on the elements mixed in the air. Michael waited for the beast to finish feasting and approach them. He slowly drew his black sword from the sheath on his back. Somehow, the beast was immune to the air, unlike the tiger and the other creatures. Chapter 837. Fighting two beasts in the same day. Each moment felt like an eternity to Thilv and Taskin. They could hear their heartbeats slowly rising. Their eyes were fixed on the forest before them. Soon, the beast slowly stepped out of the cover of the trees and granted them a look at its body. Thilv and Taskin took a step back. The beast reminded Michael of the Komodo dragon back on Earth. It was a large lizard with long tails, a strong and agile neck and sturdy limbs. The beast's tongue was red, forked, and oozed blood. It had a stone-color skin with distinct, large scales. SSSSSSS. The beast hissed at them but locked its gaze on Michael. Somehow, the beast sensed the real threat among the three was Michael. Perhaps the sword in his hand, or perhaps he himself threatened the beast. Michael felt Mother Luck was on his side today. While harvesting the ingredients, he pondered about the antidote. To brew an antidote, he needed something that was naturally immune to the air around him. That's where the beast came in. If he could get the beast's flesh and blood, he would be able to brew an antidote without a problem. Michael clenched his dark sword. One would be surprised to see the three dragons in his hilt wrap around his arms like they were alive and provide more grip. He didn't take out his second sword but decided to slice and dice the beast using one. Step by step, the beast strolled toward Michael. Thilv and Taskin slowly walked backward, while maintaining their focus on the beast. However, the beast only focused on Michael. When the beast was just a few meters away from Michael, it started to gallop, increasing its speed significantly. Suddenly, the beast pushed its legs into the ground and lunged at Michael with its mouth wide open. The poor beast had no idea how fast Michael could move. He just swayed his body to the side and dashed forward with his blade tilted to the side. Thilv and Taskin felt a gust of wind blow past him as one beast became two. Michael's sword cut through the beast's body like a hot knife through butter. Two halves of the beast hit the ground with a sickening thud. Blood sprayed out everywhere, including Michael, Thilv, and Taskin. Michael sheathed his sword back into the sheath and turned around. The beast looked like neatly cut fish fillets, except it had more blood, bits of pieces of the tiger it just ate, and entrails. Although the wood elves were shocked at how quickly the beast died, they weren't disgusted by the sight of its dead body. This told Michael that these wood elves had witnessed much worse. Good they aren't soft-bloods, Michael said to himself. He flicked his wrist as a dagger, and a glass jar appeared in his hand. Then Michael squatted beside the two halves of the body and carved out the beast's heart, flesh, and collected its blood into the jar. Once again, Michael hated the system for not giving him any experience points. But then again, killing a creature with no cultivation level was as easy as stepping on an ant. It was no challenge or thrill. After collecting the body parts of the beast, Michael turned his focus on the ingredients. "Shall we continue?" asked Michael as Thilv and Taskin snapped back to reality. They continued to collect the mushrooms. Hours passed without their notice. Michael enjoyed the momentary peace and quiet. Eventually, Michael picked enough mushrooms and harvested enough ingredients to get his potion business running for a few months. This time would be enough for him to earn gold coins and invest or build businesses to generate passive income. "It's enough," said Michael. Thilv and Taskin were sweating. The task exhausted them quite a bit. "If you don't mind me asking, my lord, what are you planning to do with all these? They seem poisonous," Taskin asked Michael. "They are. But with a little bit of magic, the mushrooms could be turned into something special," Michael answered as he strolled toward the pond. He washed his face in the crystal clear water. Then he decided to return to the tribe. On the way back, Michael led them instead of the other way around. He memorized the path back to the tribe. Taskin and Thilv followed him while cautiously looking around their surroundings. Almost after walking in peace and quiet for an hour, Michael slowed down. The red forest was far behind them, and they entered the forest part with sparkling blue trees. "Something wrong, my lord?" Taskin questioned Michael. "Climb up this tree and stay there." Michael pointed at the tall tree beside him. Taskin and Thilv were bewildered, but they chose not to question their god. Taskin nodded as he put his back against the tree, boosted his wife to the top, and climbed up the tree with Thilv's help. They used the branches and holes in the tree as stepping stones to reach the top. Michael leaned against the tree as though he was waiting for someone. Suddenly out of nowhere, an arrow soared through the air, piercing the veins, foliage, and saplings. The arrow almost hit Michael's wrist where he wore the Olympus. It didn't feel like whoever fired the arrow missed the mark, but targeted the Olympus precisely. But before the arrow could hit Olympus and shatter it to pieces, Michael caught the arrow just a few inches away from Olympus. Upon sitting on the highest branch in the tree, Phil and Toscan were stunned. As far as they could see, no one was there. Still, the arrow came from somewhere. You are good marksman. I give you that. Michael's voice swept across the forest. Pity you are not as good as you think you are, said Michael. He was nonchalant about the arrow or who fired it. Ever since he stepped onto the demon's grave, he had a feeling someone was following him. Although the environmental scanning sensed nothing, his instincts told him that he was being followed. Yet again, his instincts were spot on. Whoosh! Michael heard the sound of the whistling wind as another arrow came from another direction. Not even a second passed when another arrow soared through the forest from the opposite direction of the previous arrow. Michael caught the two arrows just in time before they hit Olympus. Whoever you are, you want a fair fight. Am I right? Asked Michael. Arch energy from the crystals amplified Michael's voice to the point the creatures around him scattered away in fear. The arrows stopped. Then, Michael threw away the arrows and removed Olympus from his wrist. He had a feeling the one who fired the arrows was watching everything. Michael placed the Olympus on the ground and waited for the person to show themselves. Silence fell over them. A few seconds later, the vegetation around Michael rustled. Thrive, and Taskin noticed something big and black approaching them. The figure lurked in the shadows and seemed to hide itself using the shadows. They perfectly blended with the forest despite how colorful the forest was. Stay up there, Michael said to Taskin and Thilv when they seemed reluctant to stay still, and let Michael handle the shadowy figure. The rustling noises pounded louder and louder as the figure finally stepped out of the shadows. Thilv and Taskin were caught off guard. Simply put, they were stunned. It was a giant black panther that walked on its 2 feet like a human. Michael remained calm as the black panther cautiously made his way toward Michael, but kept a safe distance. When Taskin and Thilv looked closer, the black panther had more humanoid features than they initially saw. He had the face of a panther and shiny black fur, but his muscles and limbs looked more human than those of a panther. His black tail swayed with the wind. The Black Panther's eyes glistened with immense killing intent. Michael could feel the murderous lust radiating from the panther. Where did I see you before? Michael rubbed his chin. The Black Panther became more furious, seeing how calm Michael looked. However, except for his eyes, nothing betrayed the anger within the Black Panther's heart. It was a trait of a seasoned warrior. Michael was sure of that. They both slowly started to walk in a circle while maintaining eye contact. Michael snapped his fingers as his eyes brightened. You were with Tanulia Vauren, the invisible bodyguard. I knew I'd seen you somewhere, said Michael. But the rage within your eyes, it feels personal. Like I took away someone you loved. Don't tell me you were in love with Tanulia, Michael snickered. Nah, Michael shook his head. It's much more. Jacoby. The Black Panther finally opened his mouth. His voice sounded extremely thick and gritty. Since there were no beast men in Itanes and Taskin and Thilv had never seen one, they were completely shocked. Their god looked smaller compared to the 7-foot monstrosity, riddled with muscles. Yet they saw no fear in the Dark Lord's eyes. Not that they expected a god to be afraid of a cat. Jacoby. Michael tilted his head, trying to recall the name. Sorry, no idea, Michael shrugged. Of course, Michael remembered Jacoby. Even if he didn't know the name, the Black Panther had a resemblance with only one person Michael had met, the one who tried to hunt down Gaia, and almost succeeded. Everything started to make sense except how this Black Panther managed to not only enter the demon's grave, but also come here. I shall make you remember then. Ghost. The Black Panther addressed Michael by his name instead of the Dark Lord. Before he disappeared, he was tracking Gaia, the Queen of Nagaland. Did you kill him? Asked the Black Panther. Michael could tell the Black Panther wanted some closure. He might be a good tracker, but he couldn't have found Jacobus' body, because Michael burned it to ashes. The moment he agreed to track down Gaia, he sealed his own fate. But did I kill him? Michael rubbed his chin, pretending to think. Looking at the Black Panther and Michael, Thilv and Taskin were utterly confused. But judging by their words, they could understand that there was some kind of history between the two of them. Chapter 838 Cat and the Way Back Home. Defeat me in a duel, and I might tell you what I did to Jacoby, Michael snickered. Phil and Taskin froze when they felt the stillness in the air. Something was about to go down, and they felt it in every fiber of their being. Michael swayed to the side and bent his back as he heard the twang of a bowstring. An arrow flew above Michael's head and struck the tree behind him. Michael looked up to see the Black Panther on the tree branch. In a blink of an eye, the Black Panther managed to leap onto the branch, getting a higher ground to attack Michael with his bow. The Black Panther nimble jumped to another branch. Then he descended to a lower branch and swung himself to another tree. His movements were graceful, so Michael could tell he had years of training. Michael drew his sword and deflected the arrows without breaking a sweat. Seeing the arrows causing no harm to him, the Black Panther rolled down from the tree and dashed at Michael. Michael jumped in the air before the Black Panther could cut his throat with the arrow he was about to fire. Then the Black Panther took out a pair of jade daggers. He quickly changed course after his initial attack failed. With speed beyond anything or anyone Thilvan Taskin witnessed, the Black Panther lunged at Michael. The serrated edge of the blade grazed Michael's shoulder, but the knife barely cut the skin for the blood to seep through. Then it was Michael's turn. Michael brought down the black sword toward the top of the Black Panther's head. He quickly raised his daggers in an X above his head to block the black sword. But the Black Panther knew how sharp and strong the black sword was. He quickly, almost at the speed of lightning, deflected the sword using the daggers. Then Michael swung his left fist at the Black Panther's face. He had to bring down his hand to block his fist. As Michael expected, the Black Panther instinctively lowered his hand to block the fist. Before the panther could cut Michael's fist with his dagger, Michael swung the black sword, nicking the side of his face. Then Michael lashed out and kicked the panther's knee. SSSHHHH. The panther hissed in pain. Without giving the panther time to retaliate, Michael dashed at the Black Panther, slamming him against the tree behind. The entire tree shuddered, shedding half of its sparkling leaves. Any weak man would have had his ribs crushed by sheer force. However, the beastmen were built differently. They were far stronger, faster, and more agile compared to humans. Even when he was slammed against the tree, the Black Panther managed to flick his dagger, cutting Michael in the wrist. The sharp pain caused Michael to lose grip on the black sword. It flew away from Michael and landed on the ground with a thud. Michael hated losing his sword as he grabbed both the panther's wrists and slammed them against the tree once again. This time, the panther lost the daggers. Not as weak as you thought, isn't it? Michael asked, holding the panther against the tree. Every muscle in Michael's body bulged. His ripped body stunned even Taskin. Clearly, the Black Panther underestimated Michi, raw strength. He and Gaia trained their physical bodies every single day like clockwork. Since he was an alchemist, Michael supplemented his body with healthy foods and potions to reach the peak of his physical strength. So even without celestial energy or arch energy, Michael was far stronger than any human at the same cultivation stage as him. The Black Panther groaned to muster every bit of his strength and headbutted Michael to escape his hold. Michael's nose cracked with a sickening crunch as the Black Panther leaped away from Michael. He needed to put some distance and re-evaluate his strategies to win against such a powerful opponent. Phil and Taskin looked at the battle with horrified looks in their eyes. They witnessed their god bleed. The words Michael spoke about powerful people and enemies rang inside their brains. They could only imagine how powerful these people would be to make even a god bleed. The panther heard Michael chuckling instead of groaning in pain. He slowly turned around and slapped the broken nose to align the cracked bones to their place. The blood stain on his front teeth and the villainous smile made Michael look evil. The panther slowly realized why the entire world was afraid of him. If he had no brother to avenge, he would have avoided clashing with such a terrifying being. Not that he was afraid of the Dark Lord, but unlike his brother Jacoby, he avoided crossing paths with people like the Dark Lord, who would go to any lengths to seek revenge. It was too late for both of them. This feud could only be settled by blood. Michael wiped off the blood before dashing at the panther once again. Fist met fist. Their fists clashed in the forest, and their feet danced beneath them. The Black Panther was quick, but so was Michael. despite removing the Olympus. Michael landed more blows on the panther than the panther did. Each punch created a heavy thud upon hitting their bodies. Their clash decimated everything below them and created a circle of dead plants. Several trees had human and cat-shaped holes and fist-sized holes. Although the panther provided some extent of challenge, he was nowhere near defeating Michael. Ever since someone from the Vampire Death Squad called the Puma almost defeated Michael in close combat, because he used Counter Serpent Mega, Michael was altering and perfecting his fighting technique. Coupled with Michael's brute strength, agility, and cat-like reflex, only a few people in the world could fight him head-to-head and survive. After a while, the panther started to breathe heavily as his movements became wobbly. Michael knocked him down to the dirt with a swift spinning wheel kick to the panther's head. When Michael approached the panther, the latter tried to stab Michael with a short blade he hid under his fur. But Michael kicked the blade and pinned his hand to the ground with his knees. "It's over," said Michael. He then proceeded to punch the panther in the face. A couple of punches made the panther's sight blurry. Michael showed no mercy as he continued to punch the panther until his fist ached. "Just because I cannot use cultivation energy doesn't mean you can defeat me. Look at me." Michael raised his voice. He grabbed the panther's face and turned it to look him in the eyes. "Now tell me how you came here," Michael asked the panther. "You first. What did you do to Jacoby?" Instead of answering Michael's question, the panther questioned Michael. Michael drew the other black sword on his back and held it against the panther's throat. "Don't make this harder on yourself, kitty cat. You've been dancing with the devil way too long, and it's your time you paid the due. Go on, kill me. But I won't give you any answers until you tell me about what you did to Jacoby." "System, scan him," Michael ordered the system in his mind. He hated asking the system, considering he had already taken out a loan, and the more he asked, the more he would have to pay. Nonetheless, the panther gave Michael no choice. Rather, Michael didn't want to give the panther closure. Scanning initiated. Surprisingly, the system asked for no badass points. Instead, it began to scan the panther. A beam of light only Michael could see brushed past the panther's body from head to toe. Suddenly, Michael noticed a glow on the panther's chest. When the light disappeared, a chain with a couple of beads glistened around the panther's neck. Each bead was the size of a coin and engraved with the face of a cat. The panther noticed something strange in Michael's eyes. It felt like his gaze was staring right through his soul. The panther squirmed, trying to escape. Michael grabbed the invisible necklace, and when he was about to rip it off the panther's neck, Michael felt a chill running down his spine. Every cell in his body screamed at him to dash away from the panther. And that's exactly what Michael did. He rolled away from the panther. Out of nowhere, a vortex appeared right where Michael was a second ago and pulled the panther right into it. The space distortion Michael felt at that moment was nothing he had ever felt. In a blink of an eye, the panther and the vortex vanished into thin air. Damn it, Michael cursed the teleportation portal. But he felt something in his hand. When he looked down, he saw a single coin in his palm. The silver coin with a cat's face radiated a dim glow in his hand. "That is your way home," host said the system. "What is this?" Michael asked the question. He almost forgot Thilv and Taskin were watching him from above. The system level is too low to answer the question. The system's answer disappointed Michael. "How do I use dash?" Michael halted his question as he suddenly remembered the copper ring left behind by the past Dark Lord. He had a feeling that the copper ring might open a portal using the coin. But it was not the time for him to test the theory. There were so many unknowns in Itanes and the Demon's Grave. For now, getting home safely took high priority. However, before he could leave, he had to visit the ash field and see what Skyhall was up to. With few things and many questions in his head, Michael strolled toward where he put the Olympus, picked it up, and wore it around his wrist. The Olympus was not the only thing he picked from the ground. He also picked up the arrows left behind by the panther, who was called the cat by his people. "You can come down," Michael said to Thilv and Taskin. After wearing the Olympus, Michael just raised his hand as the black sword that slipped off his hand flew straight back to his hand. "Now that was one of the many people I have to kill back on my world," Michael said to the Wood Elves with a calm smile. Chapter 839 Crafting Crossbows for the Elves. By the time Michael returned to the tribe, The sun had almost fallen into the horizon. He leaped from the ground to comfortably land on the wooden platform above the ground. "My lord!" Kirat and the other wood elves bowed toward Michael. After nodding at them, Michael strolled to his throne and saw Vidora lying on it belly up. The throne was littered with bits and pieces of fruits and bare bones of fish. Iag snored as a trail of drool trickled down her mouth. Michael lifted them up from the throne and raised his hand as a gust of wind blew past the throne. The wind blast cleaned his throne. Michael plunged onto the throne and took out the coin he picked from the panther. He fiddled with the coin until Iag, Sarba, and Cain slowly opened their eyes. Sarba rubbed the sleep off of his eyes. When their visions cleared, they saw the dark lines on Michael's forehead. It was obvious he had met some trouble while they were feasting and living like a god. "What is that?" Iag asked, looking at the coin in his hand. Sarba turned his gaze. He saw a strange glow coming from within the coin. "Do you remember the beast man who tried to capture Gaia on Zanala's behalf?" Michael asked Vidora. "What of him?" "Don't tell me he's alive somehow." Iag frowned. "Someone in his tribe followed me here." "This coin belongs to him," said Michael. Sarba's jaw dropped slightly. They all pushed their questions and doubts to the corner of their minds and asked Michael what had happened. Michael told them everything, starting from the invisible guard he saw near Tanulia to the powerful vortex that appeared to save the panther. The panther's disappearance left Michael with more questions than answers. He knew the Sky Hall built a portal to reach Itanes somehow, but it was no portal that saved the panther. Someone created the vortex, and they didn't want Michael to have the coins. The Dark Lord said killing monsters in the demon's grave would make some asshole stronger. I wonder if that asshole is the same one who created the vortex. "It seems like he has control over the demon's grave," said Cain. As usual, Cain and Michael shared the same thought. But what Michael didn't know was that the asshole was another god of time and space, Andor. In his previous life, Andor was his arch-nemesis. At that time, Michael was the only god who was able to stop Andor, but the price Michael paid to defeat Andor was a little too much. Before resetting the universe, the Dark Lord ensured Andor wouldn't hurt his new self since he would be at his weakest. He placed an array above the mortal realm, preventing Andor from returning home and bringing the other gods to the mortal world. If Andor ever wanted to get back, he needed Michael. "We need to get more answers before we leave this world," said Michael. "Speaking of answers, we heard the Wood Elves climb the Mother Tree to get the Dark Lord's blessings. We also heard those who successfully climbed to the top heard the voice of the Dark Lord. What if he had left another recording for you at the top? It might help us shed some light on things," said Iag. She sounded surprisingly intelligent. Michael almost wondered whether the fruits she devoured had some influence on her brain cells. Because normally, Iag preferred to attack the problem than think about it. "They would be worried if we depart now. Let's head out there tomorrow." According to the elves, the Mother Tree is on the way to the ash field. "We should climb up there, see what's there, and then head to the ash field," said Sarba. Michael rubbed his chin for a moment before agreeing to Sarba's suggestion. "Besides, we need to find a way to dress up these elves. Some of the girls said the tribe loses at least 10 elves yearly to the winter," Sarba said with concern for the elves. Michael had been thinking about the clothing issue for some time. However, buying clothes for the elves from the system was out of the question because it not only cost quite a lot of badass points, but he had also taken a loan from the system. It left him with only one option. He had to buy clothes from his world and bring them here. But to do that, he needed a portal connecting Itanes and his castle, where he planned to build the portal. "I am a blacksmith and an alchemist, not a tailor. I cannot solve their problem until we find a way to travel back and forth." As they were discussing the clothing issue, Karat and a few girls came carrying a wooden platter filled with various fruits, boiled fish, and what seemed to be roots. "My lord, please accept this," Karat bowed. "Thank you." Michael took the platter from Karat and thanked them, which stunned the elves. "Have everyone eaten yet?" Michael asked Karat. The warmth the elves felt from his words could not be described with mere words. Their hearts were filled with such joy and delight. "We will eat later on, my lord," said Karat, controlling his tears from escaping his eyes. "Sylvia here told us they haven't had meat in months." Iag looked at the brown-haired elf and said. The elven girl trembled. "Lady Iag, The girl scowled as Ayag let out a devilish grin. Is it true, Karat? Don't you guys go hunting? Karat sighed before answering Michael. We used to, my lord. But we lost our entire hunter group to the demons. Without them, hunting for the meat has become too dangerous. After hearing Karat, Michael placed the silver platter on the throne's hand and stood up. Tonight, we are having meat. I am going hunting, and there will be no negotiation. Did I hear the word meat? Yee, I meat. The children immediately became delighted to hear Michael. Many gasped and bounced in joy, especially children who hadn't had meat for months. The one who grinned the widest was Ayag. Unlike the elves, Ayag didn't go without meat for months but just a week. However, in her mind, a week was just as long as a couple of years. Michael gathered up the men in the time, including Taskin. Soon, all the male elves in the tribe gathered around Michael. Karat, where do you get your bows? Michael asked the old elf. We make our own, my lord, said Karat. Before we go hunting, I want you to bring all the planks and wood logs you used to craft the bows. A couple of elves jumped down from their tribe and headed outside to bring everything Michael needed. The elves were curious to see why Michael suddenly asked for logs and planks. A few minutes later, the elves returned carrying wooden planks and logs that had a rosy tint to the wood. In addition, they also brought rolls of rope they used to make strings. After they placed the planks and logs before Michael, he gestured at the elves to take a few steps back. Then, he unsheathed the dark swords and started to carve the wood. The gears in Michael's inventor side of the brain worked at full capacity. Every move Michael made had a certain grace to it. He often entered the system and brought a few additional parts for the thing he was building. Under the elves' curious gazes, Michael effortlessly built not one but 5 crossbows. It had been some time since he put his inventor skill to good use. Now that he had a forge and the blacksmith trait, he would be able to build more powerful weapons. Underwater torpedo for Big Bertha was just an example. Michael was able to build these beautiful recurve crossbows with the common materials found in Itanes. He decorated the limbs with ebony details and ended in rounded curves ornamented with wrapped leather. The stock was wrapped in glistening blue leaves commonly found in the forest. Since Michael felt generous, he crafted a long quiver for every crossbow using deer hide. He decorated the outside with animal horns. In the hands of any archer, this bow was capable of firing arrows up to 70 meters while still retaining lethal power. What is this, my lord? Taskin asked Michael. Watch. Michael raised the crossbow, knocked an arrow into the barrel, and aimed at a tree almost 20 meters away from them. Move aside. Ayag flew through the crowd and pushed them aside from the bolt's trajectory. When the elves cleared out from his path, Michael pulled the trigger. Whoosh. As soon as Michael pulled the trigger, the bolt shot out of the crossbow, creating an acute swish. The bolt soared through the air and hit the tree Michael aimed in a blink of an eye. It penetrated deep into the bark and jerked for a moment. Considering Taskin and most of the wood elves were skilled archers, they were speechless to see the speed and the power of the crossbow. You can fire a bolt up to 70 meters. I built it in a way you do not have to worry about wind direction. Just aim and fire. Michael demonstrated how to reload the crossbow and fired another bolt farther than the previous one. When he first arrived at his new world from the Earth, he had a hard time hitting the targets using a bow and arrows. Of course, he could hit the targets in close range, but the cultivators used arch energy to hit targets beyond what a normal human being could hit. Thanks to Gaia and practice, he became a deadly marksman. He still had a long way to go to reach Gaia's level. She was a frickin' beast when it came to long-range combat. One time, he saw Gaia hit a drone flying through dark clouds in a storm from 500 meters away. He doubted he could reach her level without the system's help. She was a natural-born marksman. Many elves gasped in shock, and then their eyes sparkled, hoping they would get one from Michael. I will make more soon. For now, I'll let Karat decide who gets one, said Michael. Chapter 840 Death of Vidora. The next day, Michael prepared to head for the ash field. When Michael returned to the tribe from meditating on the hilltop he first arrived at, he saw the wood elves snoring loudly and sleeping like babies. Last night, they feasted on all kinds of meat after Michael and Taskin brought enough meat to serve them all. Michael himself barbecued the meat and served his devotees. He enjoyed taking a break from all the pressure of being the Dark Lord, and enjoyed the feast with the Wood Elves. The meat from the game in Itanes tasted way better than the game back in his world. Apparently, the deer-like animal with a glowing belly infested the forest and grazed the vegetation without control. Their natural predators ran deeper into the forest, and many fell victim to the red forest, and were eaten by the lizard-like beast. If he hunted them down, he would be doing a favor to the forest and the Wood Elves. He did plan to hunt them down after he opened up Hades again using another name. Wake up! Michael landed beside his throne to see Iag drooling on his throne. He tapped all 3 heads and woke them up. Juicy meat want more. Iag mumbled for a moment before falling back to deep slumber. She reminded Michael of Gaia as he smiled. Michael lost count of the times he had to carry her to the bed from the top of the mountain they trained often. Waking up Gaia without getting his face bruised was the toughest challenge he faced every day. The first few times she anciently punched him in the face, she woke up and apologized. But later on, she would just laugh and say he deserved it for waking her up early. Now Iag acted just like her, minus the getting punched in the face. My lord! Kirat strolled toward Michael, navigating through the sleeping Wood Elves. Instead of returning to their homes, all the elves fell asleep on the spacious wooden platform. This village was an architectural marvel. They managed to build numerous wooden homes, bridges, lift systems, and a large wood platform in the center anchored to several trees. Every time he saw the village, he remembered the dark elven village. They almost looked the same, but the magical forest and the Wood Elves' kindness added charm and beauty to this village. I should wake these good-for-nothing elves, Kirat scowled. He felt offended to see them sleeping while their god was long awake. It's okay. Let them sleep. I know how it feels to sleep without worry in the world. I almost missed that feeling, Michael said while keeping a straight face. Where is the breakfast? Iag asked, yawning. Her jaw opened wide, making Michael worried that it would get stuck. You are not in the castle, said Michael as Iag rubbed the sleep off her eyes. She heaved a sigh of disappointment when the realization hit her. I should fetch you something to eat right this instant, Lady Iag. No. Michael stopped Kirat with a wave of his hand. I'll get them something on the way to the mother tree, said Michael. He avoided telling Kirat the full truth that he was on his way to the ash field. To the Wood Elves, the ash field was a forbidden land. No one alive in the tribe had visited or even seen the place. According to Taskin, the ash field was far north of the mother tree and relatively closer to some orc tribes. He didn't think the orcs would step onto the ash field or anyone for that matter. Simply put, Michael learned nothing about the ash field from the elves, and it seemed like no one knew about the place, which made Michael more curious. I'll be back when I can, said Michael before slowly ascending into the air. We will wait for your arrival, my lord. Kirat bowed as Michael shot through the canopy and disappeared from Kirat's sight. After leaving the tribe, Michael cast the lightning dash. Kirat vaguely saw a streak of black lightning in the sky and stared at the sky until the lightning faded away. In the sky, Michael was on his way to the mother tree at full speed. Fedora wrapped their tail tightly around Michael's neck and tried not to fall down. Everything around them seemed blurry due to Michael's speed. When things cleared up, they reached the mother tree. Even when Michael was way higher from the ground, the top of the tree seemed far away. The tree spanned as far as one could see. A sparkling canopy overshadowed the blue sky itself. It would take a couple of the tallest buildings on Earth to be stacked on top of each other to reach the mother tree's height. Michael wanted to see the tree at night, where it would radiate like a giant neon tube light. How did Taskin climb to the top? And how the hell does anyone climb to the top? Iag's neck ached just by looking up at the tree. The mere thought of climbing the tree without using energy seemed absurd to her. Resilience, said Michael. You can do almost anything if you put your mind to it. Michael slowly hovered toward the tree while noticing the empty castle ground and campsite around the mother tree. As Michael expected, the old woman kept her word. The Skyhall soldiers finally vacated the once the holy ground of the Wood Elves. We should take over the castle, Iag suggested after looking at the empty castle. However, Michael firmly shook his head. No. This place used to be holy, and I will keep it that way. The moment we build a portal connecting this world to ours, I am razing everything the Skyhall made to the ground. For now, Michael didn't want to start a wildfire that would engulf everything, including the mother tree itself. Besides, there might be something inside the castle he could use against the Sky Hall. Even though Michael doubted the old woman would have left something, she didn't seem like someone who would make such a careless mistake. Michael increased his speed to reach the top faster, but didn't fly at his full speed because he didn't want to miss any clues. As he was flying toward the top of the tree, Michael noticed several birds with strange designs on their body and colorful eyes that glowed like jewels. He had never seen such exotic birds before. They all scattered away and flew into the holes in the mother tree's branches as wide as a typical big tree. The tree was home to unknown species and had its own unique ecosystem. His love for Itenes surged to the point he realized why the past Dark Lord had taken such interest in Itenes. What Michi didn't know was the past Dark Lord did not only simply take an interest in this world, but protected the world from Andor and his schemings. He had to kill someone he cared dearly to save this world from getting destroyed. Almost after 30 minutes, Michael reached the top, where 11 branches branched out from the center that looked like an elegant garden. These branches looked like pillars that held the canopy on their backs. Michael felt a pleasant chill on his feet when he landed on the grass field. Birds chirped in the distance as Michael strolled toward something that looked man-made. To be precise, it was a giant stone pillar entangled by veins and moths. It didn't feel like he was on top of a tree. Instead, it felt like he was walking in a hall made of Mother Nature herself. Everything around him was untouched by death and destruction caused by the Sky Hall. He didn't think the Sky Hall soldiers ever managed to reach this place. They would have if they could use arch energy. Thank the gods, they couldn't. Otherwise, the Sky Hall soldiers would have hunted down the bright blue feathered birds watching him just for their feathers. Michael's full focus was on the stone pillar. The closer he got to the pillar, the more he felt a strange energy coming from it. When Michael reached the almost 7 feet tall pillar, he grabbed the veins coiling around and pulled them apart. It took him a few seconds to completely get rid of the veins. Finally, Michael was able to see the stone pillar clearly. What he saw engraved in the stone pillar rendered him speechless. His heart almost skipped a beat. For a brief moment, Michael's mind just went blank. The reason for Michael's complete shock was the engraving of a man with 2 swords fighting a 3-headed hydra hundreds of times the size of him. That was only a part of the mural. Below that, they saw the fallen hydra and the man kneeling before its body, presumably exhausted after a battle. It can't be real. It's not. It must be Mugashuku, Ayag muttered as Kane slowly shook his head. Mugashuku is a 4-headed hydra. That would be us unless there was another 3-headed hydra in existence, said Kane. Then that's not Ghost. It must be someone else. Ayag's eyes watered. Look at the swords he was holding. Kane pointed at the swords. Although the swords seemed small, they could see the 3 dragons in the hilt, looking exactly the same as Michael's dark swords. Michael had no words as he was in utter shock. If the mural was something that happened in the past, to be precise, happened to the past Dark Lord, it meant the past Dark Lord fought and killed Vidora. But why? That was the question that drilled his brain to the core. He knew the past Dark Lord's life was kind of fucked up, yet Michael never imagined it would be fucked to the point he had to fight and kill Vidora. Vidora was family to him. There must be more to this, Sarba stuttered. He would never hurt Ghost, and he knew his siblings wouldn't too. We don't have to freak out. I said this is Ghost, but I didn't say it's our ghost. Kane's words somehow managed to calm down Ayag and Sarba. But what happened between us that made us fight to the death? Asked Sarba. Chapter 841 by Ning's Fear. Please be careful. Inside a cozy room draped with sky blue curtains, the old woman Michael met at the castle talked to a girl in a mirror. The girl's figure slowly faded out of existence after the old woman waved her hand. After the girl's figure vanished, the mirror reflected the old woman's figure. The girl who just disappeared was none other than Rowena Winston, the Holy Maiden, and the old woman Michael met was her maid by Ning. Despite how frail the old woman looked with her wrinkly skin and hunched back, she was an immortal at level 10. However, she suppressed her cultivation stage to make herself look like a fusion stage warrior to most of the Sky Hall soldiers. At that moment, Bai Ning resided in a quickly built cabin in an ash field. She was tasked to supervise the dig site where they were supposed to find something that could rival the Dark Lord himself in a battle. Do not come back without results, Bai Ning. Bai Ning heard a thunderous voice in her head. She immediately dropped to her knees when she heard the voice. Almost instantly, sweat beads formed on her face, and she remained on her knees for a few long moments. She had only feared 3 people in her life: the Holy Maiden, the Dark Lord, and this mysterious Lord of the Sky Hall. Bai Ning didn't fear the first 2 as much as she feared the latter because Rowena and the Dark Lord were still weak compared to her. The same could not be said of the mysterious Lord. He could end her and the entire Sky Hall with a snap of his fingers. Even the great elders of the Sky Hall feared him. Luckily for most others, they didn't know such a person existed. Many thought, including the Holy Maiden herself, that Holy Maiden was the highest rank. However, the truth was that there existed someone above the Holy Maiden. The most powerful great elders served him, and feared him more than they did the Holy Maiden. Deep down, Bai Ning didn't want to see this mysterious lord in person. Instead, she was quite happy serving him from the shadows. Bai Ning hoped that the Holy Maiden would bend her knees to this mysterious lord when the time came, though Bai Ning didn't think that would happen, judging by Rowena's temperament. Even after the voice's effect on her faded, Bai Ning couldn't get back to her feet. Eventually, she managed to muster enough strength to stand up and leave the cabin. Bai Ning heaved a sigh as she strolled toward the wooden door and twisted the golden knob. As soon as the door opened, she was welcomed by an alarming sight. Lightning struck close to her and all around the place again and again. The sky roared as an eternal thunderstorm dominated this realm. Strange sounds erupted from behind Bai Ning, perhaps 2 beings fighting each other or a collapsing landscape. In spite of the treacherous landscape, she got the feeling she was not in immediate danger. This place was no walk in the park, but at the very least, she should be able to survive for a couple of weeks. The men she brought from Sky Hall, and those who occupied the mother tree were doing typical labor such as carrying crates, erupting tents to survive the thunderstorm, and digging holes everywhere as though they were searching for something. It was tough for Bai Ning to see through the ashen air. The entire place had an eerie crimson-red hue to it. Bai Ning decided to go out there and look at how the digging process was going in person. Cupping the mother tree was just a secondary task. Their main task was to dig up something that the mysterious Lord ordered the great elders to do. With the equipment coming from Sky Hall and extra manpower, Bai Ning believed they could find whatever was hiding in the ash field. You have 3 weeks. Bai Ning's mind replayed the words spoken to her by the mysterious Lord. Initially, when they first arrived at Itanes 2 months ago, she had no worries or pressure. The mysterious Lord rarely bothered to speak to her. But imagine her surprise when the Dark Lord himself came to pay her a visit. Then all hell broke loose. Something inside the mysterious Lord broke after he heard the Dark Lord's name. Bai Ning lived long enough to tell when someone was feeling overwhelming killing intent. She didn't know the history between the Dark Lord and the mysterious Lord, but one thing was certain: the mysterious Lord had deep hatred toward the Dark Lord. Curse you to hell, Dark Lord. Bai Ning cursed Michael under her breath and went to meet the captain of this unit. A few meters away from her, a group of silver-armored soldiers was digging the ground using shovels, while another group was carrying an unconscious soldier toward one of the tents. Lady Bai Ning, the elven captain, noticed Bai Ning and dropped his shovel. Captain Fenian, how's the digging going? Asked Bai Ning. Because of the thunderstorm and the howling wind, they had to speak louder than they were used to. We are losing more and more soldiers, Lady Bai Ning. The air is getting more and more toxic the more we dig, Lady Bai Ning. ID suggests we bring more equipment and wait till our scholars find a way to filter the air, said Fenian. But Bai Ning firmly shook her head. Not an option, Captain. The order came from the top. If we don't show results to the higher-ups in 2 weeks, it'd be our heads that roll on the table. Bai Ning didn't give a damn about the soldiers. As far as she was concerned, they were all expendable. At this rate, we won't have enough men to dig, Lady Bai Ning. We have already lost half of our men to the Dark Lord, and many of the survivors fell sick to the toxic air. Fenian raised his voice. Unlike Bai Ning, he cared about his men. Dying came up with being a soldier, but Fenian preferred dying with honor on the battlefield to digging for something. Have they taken the purification pills? Asked Bai Ning. They have, Lady Bai Ning, but the pills seem to lose their effect when they dig deeper into the ground. Maybe we tell the Holy Maiden about this. And oh! Bai Ning didn't realize she had raised her voice to the point it sounded louder than thunderclaps. The soldiers stopped what they were doing and turned their gazes to Bai Ning. Back to work. Bai Ning ordered the gazing soldiers as they quickly returned to their work. Captain Fenian, you are to tell the Holy Maiden about this under no circumstances. She hasn't ascended to the throne of the Holy Maiden yet. If she knew of this and caused a ruckus among the elders, her ascension would be hindered. I don't think I have to explain the politics in Sky Hall. Fenian creased his sword-like brows. As much as he hated hiding things from the Holy Maiden, Lady Bai Ning's words made sense to him. Besides, he knew Lady Bai Ning cared about the Holy Maiden more than anyone in the Sky Hall. If she thought telling the Holy Maiden about the ash field was not a good idea, Fenian had to obey her order. The only thing that worried Fenian was the lives of his men. Many thought the Sky Hall was a single entity and functioned as one. But it was only half the truth. The reality was that Sky Hall was politically scattered into various groups inside. For instance, some believed in and served the Holy Maiden wholeheartedly, like Fenian, while some wanted to change the hierarchy and form a circle of elders. Another group consisted of the most powerful elders who knew about the mysterious Lord's existence, and they served him, only him. I know losing your men hurts, Captain. But if we don't do this, we will lose way more to the Dark Lord. You saw what he did to those poor souls. Bai Ning sympathized with Fenian while low-key manipulating him using the Dark Lord. Fenian sighed as he looked around at his men for a moment. He could only feel pity for the men who were digging down as they were ordered without having any idea they were about to die. Rather, even if they knew they would die, they wouldn't disobey their orders. It'd be helpful and even reduce the number of casualties if we knew what we are looking for here, Lady Bai Ning. Hearing his words, Bai Ning could only sigh. You'd be the first one to know when or if they tell me, Captain. Also, I have another task for you. What is it? Asked Fenian. I want you to go to the human tribes in this world and gather as much information as you can about them. I need to know their lifestyle, who or what they worship, and how many people are in their tribe. Bai Ning paused for a second and continued. The Wood Elves are lost cause. We have to stop more people from following the Dark Lord here. If we had natives of this world doing our work, the Dark Lord wouldn't have killed them as he killed our soldiers. He still has a soft spot for his own race, and we should exploit it if push comes to shove. When should I leave? Fenian asked Bai Ning. He knew he would be more useful in collecting information that could give them an advantage over the Dark Lord than digging holes, and looking at his soldiers fall one by one. Subconsciously, Fenian didn't want to be here and deal with the guilt. No time like the present, Captain. What if the Dark Lord breaks the deal and comes here, Lady Bai Ning? Bai Ning chuckled. He won't break the deal, but he will come here to see what we are up to. In fact, I'd say he's on his way as we speak. You go and get ready to leave, Captain. I'll deal with the Dark Lord. Chapter 842 World-Ending Monster. Bai Ning supervised the digging after Captain Fenian left the ash field to gather information on the humans and Itenes. As time passed, more and more people fell sick to the toxicity in the air. Even the soldiers at the fusion stage collapsed like a lump of coal. After seeing almost 15 soldiers fall to their death, Bai Ning wondered what the hell she was ordered to dig up. As much as she liked to know the answer, she could not contact the Great Elders or the mysterious Lord. Only they contacted her, not the other way around. Lady Bai Ning! The old woman heard an elated shout from a few meters away. She quickened her steps as a group of soldiers gathered around a crater they had dug. They found something. The silver-armored soldier sitting on the edge said, bowing his head toward her. Bai Ning approached the edge and looked down. Some of the soldiers were lying in the red sand unconscious, as the remaining soldiers slowly dug something up. Bring that to me. Bai Ning raised her voice. The soldiers carried something gray and heavy. From her point of view, the object had no distinguishable shape. It took 5 soldiers to carry the object to Bai Ning. The soldiers groaned and panted heavily. A couple of soldiers from above ran downhill to help the soldiers carry the object upwards. Finally, the soldiers managed to bring the object upside and placed it before Bai Ning. The old woman squatted beside the object. Thud. Some of the soldiers who carried the object to them fell down and rolled down the crater. However, Bai Ning didn't give a damn about them. Her full focus was on the object before her. What is it? Bai Ning mumbled under her breath. She slowly ran her fingers through the object. Because it was under the ground for so long, its surface was blanketed with a thick layer of dirt. She rubbed off the dirt as much as she could. The soldiers helped her with brushes and tiny tools they used to remove the dirt. Then the object started to take the shape of a triangle. The bottom of the object had cracks, and seemed like a part of it was missing. Judging by the smoothness and the shape, Bai Ning had a feeling that this might be a broken tooth. Lady Bai Ning. As she was pondering about the object, she heard another shout. This time, a group of soldiers carried a 6-feet-long pillar toward Bai Ning. They placed the pillar with a heavy thud. To Bai Ning's surprise, the pillar and the object on the ground seemed to have been made of the same material. Bai Ning looked up as she saw the pointy end of the pillar, and felt a chill running down her spine. It is a tooth, Bai Ning muttered. The pointy end, the shape, and the cracks on the surface, everything pointed to one thing, a tooth. She wouldn't have come to this conclusion if she hadn't seen dragons in real life. But the tooth was too big to be a dragon's unless the dragon was almost 200 meters tall. There was no mention of a 200-meter dragon in any texts, and according to her knowledge, a dragon could not grow to that size. It was biologically impossible. Bai Ning's jaw dropped a few inches as she looked around the ash field, shocked to the core. At the moment, the biggest creature alive was Mugashuku, aka the dormant hydra in the southern continent. As far as Bai Ning could tell, the tooth belonged to an ancient beast bigger than Mugashuko. We are standing in the graveyard of an ancient beast, Bai Ning mumbled. Her mind cancelled out all the sounds around her. The eerie silence rooted strongly into her heart as fear crept down her spine slowly. If the tooth alone was 6 feet tall, she could only imagine how monstrous the beast would have been in real life. Take this to my tent and keep digging. Bai Ning snapped back to reality after briefly being in shock. Then, she took her gaze from the tooth to the soldiers around her. Scatter the demon caskets you have dug out, Bai Ning ordered the soldiers. Her tone contained a sense of urgency. Yes, Lady Bai Ning. The soldiers quickly nodded and carried the tooth to Bai Ning's tent. Meanwhile, the rest hurried toward the largest tent on the field to take out the demon caskets they stored there. Even on their way to the tent, some soldiers fell unconscious. While the soldier who was carrying the tooth to Bai Ning's tent wobbled as their legs felt weak. The radiation coming from the tooth was too much for the soldiers to handle. If she wasn't an immortal, she might have lost consciousness to the radiation. Bai Ning watched the soldiers carry out their words despite their comrades falling down like flies. Their loyalty and devotion toward the Sky Hall were truly remarkable. She had lived for centuries, and every generation of soldiers had the same devotion toward Sky Hall. They could only defeat the looming threat, the Dark Lord, with firm devotion and undying loyalty. Otherwise, the Dark Lord would corrupt their soldiers and turn those soldiers against them. Do not underestimate him. Bai Ning recalled the great elder's words. They were stronger than the Dark Lord, yet they avoided fighting with him. Instead, they believed the mysterious Lord's words. He wanted no one except Noah to fight the Dark Lord. Even an immortal like her shuddered when she saw him up close. When she was talking to the Dark Lord, she felt like staring at death itself. The darkness in his eyes tested her will to speak a word against him. Reading texts about the Dark Lord and witnessing his atrocities in person was as different as the sky and earth. Just thinking about him made her shudder, especially after learning what was beneath them. No matter what, she could not let the Dark Lord know the secrets of the ash field. While Bai Ning and the Sky Hall soldiers were trying to dig up the ancient beast, Michael was on his way to Ashfield at full speed. However, instead of flying in the sky, he flew through the forest to hide the trail of black lightning. He didn't want the old woman or anyone to notice him. On the way, Fedora was annoyingly silent. After seeing the mural in the pillar, they became silent, especially Ayag and Sarba. Kane, on the other hand, believed they could change the past and avoid fighting each other. The creatures and birds roaming in the forest scattered away as they felt a strong gust of wind blowing past them. Michael followed the sound of thunderstorms and the red sky in the distance to reach the ash field. Apparently, the ash field's eerie weather turned the ground and sky red, as well as created everlasting thunderstorms. They were disappointed the mother tree had no answers to their questions, but only the stone pillar. Michael didn't hear any voices or recordings of the past Dark Lord. Not everything was laid clearly for Michael by the past Dark Lord. In other words, himself. To be honest, Michael had no problem with that. Of course, it was shocking to the core that the past Dark Lord fought Vidora and killed them, but Michael believed there was more to the story than the mural told them. There must be a reason why Vidora turned against him. Eventually, the trees around him lessened in number. It felt less cluttered and more spacious. Soon, the forest opened up to an entirely new biome. From a bird's view, a straight line divided the sparkling blue forest and the red sandy place with violent thunderstorms. The sky looked like someone painted it with blood and smeared the painting with clusters of black clouds. Michael had a tough time looking through the thunderstorm. The storm lifted the red sand and started the sandstorm. Luckily, it also helped Michael blend in with the surroundings. Just like he was having difficulty locating the Sky Hall soldiers, they would have the same difficulty locating him. Thanks to the thermal vision, he was able to locate the soldiers. As soon as he turned on the thermal vision, he saw several yellowish figures with glowing redness in the center running around. They seemed to be digging the ground despite the storm. In addition, Michael also vaguely noticed some tents and tried to locate the old woman among them. However, she was nowhere to be found, at least in his vision. Michael slowly ascended into the air to better view the place. Hovering in the air, Michael took out a few drones and willed them to fly through the storm. Bang! Surprisingly, the drones exploded into pieces in a few moments. Kane creased his brows. There is some kind of energy shield around the place. Finally, Sarba broke his silence and informed Michael about the strange energy dorm he sees around the place. I don't see any shields, said Iag. Let's wait here and watch what's happening, Michael said. He didn't plan to go through the shield or break it all together, which might alert whoever placed the energy shield in the first place. Michael flew around the dome with Sarba help. As he was hovering around, he saw more demon caskets on the ground. The soldiers tirelessly unearthed them to God knows for what reason. But what lies in the ground avoided both Michael and Sarba's senses. Bai Ning and her soldiers had no idea what they were doing. As a matter of fact, only one being alive knew the origin of the ancient beast Andor. This ancient beast was a large piece in his elaborate plan to exact revenge on the Dark Lord. Chapter 843 Andor's plan for Vidora in Andor's castle. The god of time and space was sitting on his throne alone as usual. Unlike any other day, Andor had a grin plastered on his face. The reason for his unusual smile was the thing covered in gray cloth. Whatever was hiding beneath the cloth took almost half of the throne hall. Andor would look tiny if he stood beside it. Looking at the cloth-covered object, Andor waved his hand as a 6-foot circular mirror appeared and hovered in the air before him. Something created a few ripples in the mirror, as though the glass had turned liquid. Andor's hands glowed as he extended his hand toward the mirror. A bright light slowly flew out of his hand and landed on the mirror. Typically, a mirror would have reflected the bright beam of light, but not this one. Instead of reflecting the light, the mirror absorbed the light. Soon, silhouettes appeared in the mirror. Gradually, the ripples in the mirror settled down, revealing the silhouette's figure. The figure in the mirror had an eerie aura around him. He was inhumanly tall and had a bust build. Since the figure's head was covered in tentacle-like appendages, it was hard to tell whether the figure was male or female. But gender rarely bothered this figure. Something about the figure's eyes portrayed death. If the creepy death aura wasn't enough, the figure's eyes were gray as ashes, and the body was covered in soot-black fur. The figure was the embodiment of death. Greetings, Andor, the god of time and space. What a pleasant surprise. The figure talked in a demonic voice. If death had a voice, it would sound like the figure. Unlike the figure's words suggested, there was no delight or joy in seeing Andor. Fokrux, the god of necromancy. Andor greeted Fokrux back, hiding the disgust in his eyes. 6,000 years ago, Andor would have killed himself than to ask for Fokrux's help. Most of the gods treated Fokrux and his brother with disdain, as they brought nothing but death and destruction everywhere. Unlike the rest of the pantheon, Fokrux had fewer worshippers. No one in their right mind would worship the god of necromancy, which enabled mortals to reanimate the dead and spread plagues. Yet again, because of the Dark Lord, Andor was forced to do something he hated the most. In this case, Andor had to make a deal with Folkrux. How is the mortal universe treating you, Andor? I heard mortals built countless temples to worship you. Folkrux's words and tone oozed with sarcasm. Hearing such a lowly god mock him, Andor's blood boiled to the point his eyes turned red. But Andor took a deep breath to calm himself. Like it or not, Andor needed Folkrux's help, and there was no point in fighting with him. I sense a powerful death aura around you, Andor. Is that why you summoned me? Using the Stone of Hikar? Asked Folkrux as Andor sighed. The Stone of Hikar was a powerful artifact used to summon a god from the mortal realm. Before the Dark Lord locked the mortal realm and prevented Andor from ascending to the god realm, contacting gods was as easy as snapping his fingers to Andor. As the god of time and space, Andor didn't have any need for artifacts to contact the gods in the god realm. Instead, he would just open up a portal and meet them in person. But now, Andor had to use the Stone of Hikar to summon Folkrux. Unfortunately, he had to wait another 100 years to use the Stone of Hikar again. Andor hoped summoning Folkrux was worth using the stone. If anyone could help him with the object he found, it was Folkrux. Andor could see Folkrux's eyes glistening with excitement. You are right to sense the death aura. Look what I found, Andor said, rising from his throne. Then, he climbed down the stairs as the mirror followed him behind. Andor reached the object and pulled down the cloth covering the object. After the cloth fell down, Folkrux saw a colossal head of a hydra. The mirror had to fly back to capture the entire head. Even after 5,000 years, the silver scales still glistened in the light. That's the Dark Lord's hydra, Folkrux stuttered. He was completely stunned by the head. 5,000 years ago, the entire realm of gods felt the effects of the battle between Andor and the Dark Lord. Even some of the powerful gods had to leave their dimensions and intervene in the battle, not to save or fight for Andor, but to prevent the realm of gods from getting obliterated by the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord and his pet Hydra terrorized the realm, and almost succeeded in killing a fellow god. Thousands of divine beings lost their lives as collateral damage, and the damage to the realm still had remnants of their battle. No one thought a Hydra could become powerful enough to rival the most powerful gods, and for hundreds of years, everyone thought the Hydra was unstoppable, until fate played a cruel trick upon the Dark Lord and the Hydra. Something happened between the two that resulted in them fighting to the death. Only a few gods knew the real reason why they fought each other, and Folkrux was not one of them. The battle between the Hydra and the Dark Lord lasted for 2 long weeks. It was Andor who managed to teleport both of them to a separate dimension, before they destroyed the mortal realm entirely. The gods had never witnessed such an intense battle between a god and a beast. At the end of their battle, the Dark Lord slew the Hydra and emerged as the victor. Folkrux was fortunate enough to witness the death of a terrifying existence. He watched the light of life leave the Hydra's eyes, and tears roll out from the Dark Lord's eyes. Vidora! Andor raised his voice as he burst into laughter. The Dark Lord's pet. Andor's words echoed throughout the majestic throne hall. He thought resetting the mortal universe would erase his mistakes. Humph, Andor snickered. On the other hand, Folkrux narrowed his eyes. When it came to the Dark Lord, the entire god realm took a step back and analyzed everything. Every time they thought they outsmarted him, he pulled a surprise on them and made them pay. Hence, Folkrux couldn't be as excited as Andor. Are you sure whatever you're planning to do with this is a smart move? Asked Folkrux. Andor's laugh faded away as he turned around. Do you think I am making a mistake? Andor creased his brows. Folkrux slowly shook his head. I am saying the Dark Lord doesn't make mistakes. How do you know that he didn't know Vidora's body would be spared from the array? Folkrux asked Andor. After the Dark Lord used the time array and locked the mortal realm, preventing the gods from entering it, many gods in the pantheon tried to break the array. However, they all failed and gave up. The only way to break the array was from within the mortal realm. In other words, only Andor could break the Dark Lord's array, and let the gods enter the mortal realm once again as they were used to. Ha 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 ha. Andor chuckled. If he didn't make any mistakes, why did he use the time array to reset the entire universe? I can agree that he doesn't make little mistakes, but instead he made a gigantic one, and you are looking at it, said Andor. I am going to wake up to his worst nightmare. The last time they fought, this Hydra almost killed him. This time, I will make sure it doesn't fail. Andor patted the Hydra head. I assume that's where I come in. Andor nodded as Fukrix rubbed his clean-shaven chin for a brief moment. What's in it for me? If I want to help you take down the most insane and powerful god, you have to make it worth the risk. After all, we both know how far he would go to take down those who wronged him. Fukrix started the negotiation like a sly fox. Being a god didn't mean they all would be benevolent and merciful. Some of the gods made even the worst mortals look like magnanimous beings. There was a reason why the Dark Lord slew some of the gods, and willed to wage war against the pantheon itself. He hated most of the gods to the core, and some gods would say he had all the right to hate them after what they did to him. The pantheon still believes some gods helped the Dark Lord achieve the things he did, but they found no traitors among them. Fukrix's words didn't surprise Andor at all. In fact, he expected the god of necromancy to ask something in return. You get to take the body of whoever falls in the battle. Hydra or the Dark Lord himself. You'll get to play with their bodies. Fukrix's eyes sparkled as he almost drooled. But the thought of the Dark Lord surviving the battle and coming after him made his body tremble in fear. But if the Dark Lord survived somehow, he won't know you were involved. I know the drill. It's surprising how the gods have fallen. We used to fear no one. Andor snickered. Lots of things have changed, Andor. The realm of gods isn't what it used to be. You will know if you manage to break the Dark Lord's array, said Fukrix. Are you going to help me or not? Andor's voice turned grave and serious. For a few moments, Fukrix didn't give Andor any answer. Then he took a deep breath and nodded. I will help you reanimate the Hydra. But you need to find the entire body without missing a part. Also, as you know, I won't be able to use my power from here. So I will instruct you to conduct a ritual that mimics my powers and get what you want. It will take time though. Trust me, I can be very patient. Andor let out a murderous grin and turned his gaze back to the Hydra head. Chapter 844. Leaving the demon's grave in the ash field, Michael watched the Skyhall soldiers dig up more and more caskets from the ground. Unfortunately, Vidora's body eluded his X-ray vision altogether. The body was far too deep in the ground. If Andor hadn't given Skyhall the exact coordinates, they wouldn't have unearthed Vidora's body in a million years. He knew everything that happened to the past Dark Lord, so Andor was able to exploit his mistakes. Having no idea Vidora's adult body was in the ground, Michael patiently watched the Skyhall dig up more caskets. He lingered above the dig site for almost an hour, and all the soldiers did was dig. I don't see a point hanging out here any longer, said Kane. Michael didn't wait for others to agree. Instead, he turned around and flew away from the place. After seeing the mural on top of the mother tree, Michael decided to leave Itanes and the demon's grave. Initially, he planned to spend a few more days helping the Wood Elves, but he changed his plans. He thrilled himself to achieve full speed, leaving a dark lightning streak in the sky. Vidora tightened their tail around Michael's neck as they never experienced such high speed. It took them 2 hours to reach the ash field from the mother tree earlier. However, the return trip only took 45 minutes. When Michael pushed himself to the brink, several tiny lightning bolts appeared and crackled around his body. To Vidora's surprise, Michael didn't go to the tribe but came to the mother tree. He landed right before the stone pillar, creating a shock wave around the tree. Why are we back here? Asked Sarba. Boom. Michael punched the stone pillar as it exploded into bits and pieces. All it took was one punch for Michael to erase his past self's mistakes. Honestly, Michael didn't think the past Dark Lord had made a mistake by killing Vidora. Although Michael didn't know the reason, he knew how hard it would have been for the past Dark Lord to kill Vidora. But no matter what, he wouldn't let history repeat itself, and he broke the pillar as a gesture of his promise to Vidora. Our past is meant to guide us, not define us. We must not give out past the power to dictate our future. Michael looked at his shoulder where Vidora was looking at the pebbles on the ground and said. They slowly flapped their wings to see Michael in the eyes. He is right, started Sarba. The past Dark Lord left this behind because he wanted us to see it and change our future. That's what I've been trying to tell you both. Cain rolled his eyes. Usually, Cain remained silent until his response was absolutely needed. However, when his siblings tried to grow a hatred toward Ghost, he immediately came out of his shell and tried to talk some sense into them. Sarba and Cain turned their gazes toward Iag. I am not mad at Ghost, idiots. I am just confused why they fought each other to death, said Iag. Whatever the reason might have been, we do not need to dwell on it, said Michael. Can we just stay here for a moment before we go back to the tribe? Sarba looked worried as Michael nodded and went to the mother's tree's edge. He sat down and put Vidora beside him. The two of them looked at the magical world before them in peace. As they drowned themselves in the beautiful sight, Vidora slowly approached Michael and jumped on his lap. Then the three heads snuggled against Michael's stomach and tried to embrace him with their small wings. You are family, Ghost. We would never hurt you, and we know you wouldn't too. Iag's eyes became watery as Michael rubbed their back gently. Michael was about to open his mouth when he saw the silhouette of the past Dark Lord in the sky. It only lasted in the sky for a mere moment, and Michael could swear he saw the past Dark Lord smile at them before disappearing. At that moment, Michael felt something changing inside him, like something heavy had been lifted off of him. The more Michael learned about the past Dark Lord, the more he understood why he decided to reset the entire universe. At first, it felt a bit extreme to Michael, but he sympathized with him after learning about the dark parts of his life. If he had lost Gaia and been forced to kill Vidora for some reason, he would reset the universe too. He wouldn't let that happen no matter what. The two of them spent almost an hour on the mother tree before returning to the tribe. As usual, the wood elves greeted him with bright smiles and cooked meat since Taskin and the others could hunt efficiently using the crossbows. I hope you had a pleasant journey, my lord, Kirat said as Michael sat on his throne. For a few moments, Michael didn't answer Kirat. My lord, Kirat called Michael again. He looked drowned in his own thoughts to Kirat. What did you say? Michael asked, snapping back to reality. Is everything all right, my lord? Asked Kirat. Philv couldn't help overhearing Kirat and approached the two of them while Taskin was helping the other crossbow bearers perfect their aims. It will be soon, said Michael. Then, with a flick of his wrist, Michael took out the copper ring and the silver coin he snatched from the panther. Like a magnet pulling the iron closer, the copper ring pulled the silver coin almost instantly. Ding! The silver coin hit the copper coin. Michael felt the copper ring frantically vibrate as the silver coin radiated a dim glow. Soon, the silver coin glowed as bright as a torch, making the wood elves around Michael close their eyes. Suddenly, the light shot straight above Michael and opened up a vortex in the air. Michael was surprised to see the coin open up a portal in a blink of an eye. He thought he would have to ask the system or do some work to activate the copper ring. But on the contrary, the copper ring opened up a portal using the coin. How the coin was able to open up a portal was still a mystery to Michael, but he was glad it did. Seeing the weird swirling hole in the air, the wood elves gasped. When the Dark Lord first appeared in their world, Kirat saw a portal just like this portal before. In fact, Kirat saw the Dark Lord fly through this portal. Hence, his heart sank when he saw another one appear above them. The old man knew their god was about to leave their world. Michael took a step forward and placed his hand on Kirat's shoulder. I am not abandoning you all. I will be back soon. But my lord, can't you stay with us a bit longer? Philv panicked as Taskin dropped what he was doing and came to stand beside his wife. My lord, is there something we can do to change your mind? Asked Taskin, only to see Michael shake his head. There is something I must do in my world. As I promised before, I will build a portal connecting this world to mine. I can't do that from here. The wood elves looked gloomy, and some even cried. However, they knew they couldn't change Michael's decision even though they wanted to. Can we come with you, my lord? Taskin stunned everyone with his question. As much as I like for all of you to come into my world, I cannot take anyone with me at this moment. Michael slowly shook his head. He stepped back and raised his head to see the swirling vortex. As his feet ascended from the floor, the wood elves dropped to their knees one by one. Many, including children, sobbed to see the Dark Lord leave their world. Please come back soon, my lord. Kirat's voice stuttered. He was on the verge of crying out loud. Lady Iag, Don't forget what you promised us. One of the elven girls purred as Iag nodded with a smile. I want. And you people better be safe and sound when we come back. Otherwise, you will have hell to pay, Sarba shouted as tears rolled out his eyes. But they were not tears of sadness. On the contrary, Sarba was happy that they would be able to visit their world soon. Granted, both Fedora and Michael wanted to spend more time in Itenes as there was so much more to explore in the world. Yet they had no choice. To Michael, his journey through the demon's grave and Itnoi seemed cut short by an invisible force. Nonetheless, it was his choice to leave and build a portal back into the castle. Now that he had gathered everything he wanted from Itenes, the Dark Army's financial problem would soon be history. On the bright side, Michael couldn't wait to see Gaia and Nightmare and tell them everything that had transpired. When Michael was just a few inches away from the vortex, Michael took out a modified earpiece and mirror from the system storage. He had to convert all the 10 million gold coins into badass points to modify them. It was worth the price though. The earpiece and the tablet-sized mirror floated toward Kirat. You can use them to contact me if there is an emergency. Michael emphasized the word emergency, because he knew the Wood Elves would call him every day otherwise. We will meet you soon. These were Michael's words to them before he disappeared into the vortex. Meanwhile, Andor felt the vortex open in Itenes using the artifact he gave the Beastmen tribe a long time ago. The coin Michael used to create the vortex was made by none other than the god of time and space himself. So naturally, Andor felt it when Michael used the coin. Andor creased his dark brows sitting on the throne. So one of those idiots managed to lose one to my nemesis. Andor clenched his fist. This act of foolishness alone was enough for Andor to wipe out the Beastmen kingdom. Luckily for them, he had more pressing matters on hand, like reanimating Vedora's body slash. Chapter 845 4th Armor Piece. I don't care what the fuck you do, but I want him found yesterday. You understand? I am this close to murdering all the guardians I can find. Gaia stomped the ground. She stood in the surveillance room in the dark forest and contacted all the subordinates at the same time, except Saber and Adelia. If he is in the southern continent, I will find him, said Tiberius. My girls are doing everything they can, my lady, Sadie started, only to get interjected by Gaia. It's not enough. I want meet Ghost empty-handed. That fucker Noah destroyed both the prototype and the weapon. Even the blueprints are gone. So the only way to turn this into a win is to find the man behind this weapon. Gaia was not playing around. If the subordinates were to meet her in person, there would be casualties in the castle. She was pissed at everyone, including herself. Thanks to Noah and his team, she lost the prototype, weapon, and the man who built it. Like a cherry on top of a failure cake, Noah captured the orcs who survived the auction, including the leader, and brought them somewhere Gaia couldn't find. Even Lord Information didn't know anything about the orcs except they supposedly worked for the Beast King. What about the Guardian you flipped recently? If I heard you right, he is in Noah's elite unit. So how in the hell he has no idea about the inverter's location? Gaia creased her brows. Everyone went silent, expecting Sadie's answer. By turning a Guardian into their spy, Sadie outperformed everyone in the room. Even the Dark Queen praised her, which wouldn't happen so often. Through their new spy, they learned the locations of the Guardian safe houses and how Noah operated in each kingdom. However, even Noah's elites didn't know where he kept Hammond. He has no idea, my lady. It seems like Noah doesn't trust his own people enough to disclose the location. We might have a chance if we track down the Hontorum dwarves, Sadie suggested. Do you think I don't know that? The vamps are searching for them as we speak. But those bearded dodo ducks are good at hiding. After Noah's little fiasco, they went dark. If they were good at something besides building, it's hiding. The subordinates nodded in agreement. After a few more minutes of roasting all the subordinates, Gaia dismissed them. When they were ordered to leave, they all heaved a sigh of relief. To them, the Dark Queen was more terrifying than the Dark Lord himself when she was angry. They could reason with the Dark Lord, who always remains calm and collected. But in stark contrast, no one could utter a word when the Dark Queen was pissed. At that time, the only way to survive her wrath was to keep their mouths shut and agree to everything she said. My lady, Azazel appeared beside Gaia after the mirrors went dark. What does he want? Asked Gaia without turning around to look Azazel in the eyes. Her full focus was on how to find the man who was responsible for building those weapons. Lord Saber says he has an update on the 4th armor piece. As soon as Gaia heard these words, she immediately turned her head toward Azazel. Finally, some fucking good news. Put him through. Soon, Saber's face appeared in the mirror as though all the mirrors had emerged together to form a gigantic face. Judging by the ocean around Saber, Gaia could tell he was on a ship. She also noticed Shorty running around, so she guessed he was in Big Bertha. My lady, Saber slightly bowed. Tell me what you found about the armor piece? Gaia didn't ask any useless questions like how are you or how is the journey. Instead, she went straight to the point. It's in the southern continent, my lady. To be precise, it's in Myril. The man I interrogated told me his family helped bring in 2 crates of ancient artifacts to the southern continent. Apparently, the one who hired him found these artifacts buried somewhere in the Azer continent, said Saber. What makes you think these artifacts are the Dark Lord's armor? Gay rubbed her chin in doubt. Nothing Saber said had actually pointed her to think these artifacts belonged to the Dark Lord. This man's ancestor who brought these artifacts to the southern continent has left behind a ship manifest. In that list, he has written unknown metal pieces that attract lightning. His exact words were metal parts that attract crimson red lightning bolts. Gaia raised her brows as she realized why Saber had come to the conclusion that he did. However, she still had another question to ask. This man you interrogated, how did you find him? Asked Gaia. There was no chance for Saber to stumble upon a man who knew about the Dark Lord's armor piece. The past Dark Lord went to lengths to hide these pieces, and ensured only Michael could find them. Granted, one of the armor pieces was found in ruin by others and almost auctioned out to a war god, but it was just a 1 in a million occurrence. She doubted another one of the pieces might have been found by a human. Because he tried to sell this in the Aqua Palace. Saber slowly raised a broken piece of metal with a skull engraved. That is... Gaia's voice trailed off as her jaw dropped slightly. That skull in the metal piece was, without a doubt, the symbol of the Dark Lord. There was no doubt in her mind. If that wasn't enough, tiny bolts of crimson red lightning danced around the metal piece in Saber's hand. One of my people was lucky to intercept the sale and inform me, said Saber. It seems awfully legit to me. What about you, Azazel? Gaia asked the demon butler. He focused his gaze on the metal piece. We certainly cannot neglect the possibility that this piece belongs to the Dark Lord's armor piece. Gaia nodded. Have you learned where these artifacts are in the southern continent? Saber took a long deep breath before answering Gaia. About that, my lady. I have good and bad news. Start with good news. I've been getting more and more bad news lately, Gaia sighed. She thought it'd be too easy for them to get the armor piece without going through some kind of trial. It was like the Dark Lord anticipated everything and designed the trials for them. They had found 3 armor pieces so far, and each of them came at a price. Well, the good news is I've tracked down who owns these artifacts, the Salinators, one of the powerful families in Kingdom Myril. Then what is the bad news? I assume it has something to do with why you can't go there and retrieve the armor pieces by any means necessary, said Gaia as Saber nodded. The heir of Salinators, Matilia Salinator, is married to General Quintus. As soon as Gaia heard the name Quintus, a light bulb lit inside her head. In all the chaos, she forgot about Quintus and Kingdom Myril's aggressive expansion. Thanks to Kane's surprisingly masterful tactics, they were able to stop Myril from waging wars on other kingdoms. Moreover, Quintus went dark after Michael killed Fabia Viridis. They hadn't seen Quintus since she turned him into a super soldier using vampire strains. Without General Quintus, the Kingdom Myril completely ceased all its hostile activities. After Giselle and Maven merged together, they became a powerful kingdom itself. While Tiberius found his own kingdom, the Freedom Land, although he hadn't announced his land as a new kingdom yet. That left Pririd and the Trident of the Southern Continent Kivin, Zoril, and Nettis aka the kingdoms ruled by kings instead of senates. The last time Gaia heard from Caius, Kingdom Myril, and Kingdom Pririd was in peace talks. For some reason, Kane wanted the peace talks between them to drag on instead of coming to a solution. If he had thought, he could have ordered Arya to assassinate the senators of Myril, and bring an end to the Cold War. Yet he chose not to. I did some digging and found when Quintus married Matilia, the Salinator family gifted Quintus with priceless valuables and artifacts. And you think these artifacts include the Dark Lord's armor piece? Gaia tilted her head. Yes, Saber frowned. Judging by the dark lines on his forehead, Gaia guessed they couldn't simply go to Quintus' home and take the armor piece by force. Tell me what the problem is, asked Gaia. Matilia is a regular customer to a noble bathhouse where one of Sadie's girls is working. To the rest of Myril, Quintus has taken personal time, but according to his wife, he disappeared along with many of the family artifacts. I broke into their home and went through all their wealth but found no armor piece. Which means Quintus has the armor piece, Gaia finished Saber's sentence. Are you sure, Saber? Gaia asked. This is the only lead we have, my lady. I'd say we should chase it down. Gaia took a few long moments to think about this. By destroying the prototype and the weapon right under her nose, Noah caused a huge blow to her mindset. She started to second-guess everything she had planned, which was very unlikely of her. It didn't only affect her but also everyone in the Dark Army. Go ahead, but if you sense something is amiss, get out of there immediately. We cannot deny the possibility this might be an elaborate trap designed by that son of a bitch, Noah. Don't worry about me, my lady. I lived long enough to outsmart a human, Saber snickered as Gaia slowly shook her head. Do not underestimate Noah. I underestimated him. And as a result, I have failed the Dark Lord. Saber was actually surprised to see the graveness in her voice. To be honest, he had never seen her like this. I will take your advice to my heart, my lady. Now with your permission, I'd like to dismiss myself. Talk to Tiberius. He was tracking down Quintus, and he might have an idea about Quintus' location, said Gaia. Chapter 846. Back on the bed with Gaia, the storm was raging around the floating mountain in the dark ocean. As the storm grew more violent and powerful, the wind blew past strong enough to pick up a man and fling him to the briny waves. Several tornadoes formed in the sea and slowly moved toward the mountain. The superiorly thick smoky clouds rolled in like boulders, ready to crush anything in their way above the dark castle. The darkness was engulfing and seemed to consume any speck of light entirely. Any last hope was gone. The merciless winds caused the enormous waves to rise like giant sea monsters. These waves almost touched the very bottom of the floating mountain. Every wave erupted like a raging volcano. The lightning storm joined the party and decorated the sky with streaks of lightning. Except for the vampire guards who were tasked to patrol the floating mountain, everyone else took shelter inside the castle. While the storm was raging outside, Gaia sat beside the window and watched the storm outside. She tightly held a cup of hot coffee Raylene had made her. Without Nightmare and Michael, she felt lonely. For some reason, Nightmare chose to fly through the tornadoes to hone his flying skills. But she knew he just came up with an excuse to spend some time alone. It wouldn't take a genius to tell Nightmare Miss Claire and the Sunrise sect. He didn't miss them much when Vidora was there to keep him company. Since Vidora left for the demon's grave with Michael, they both felt lonely. She didn't blink as she stared at the storm through the foggy window. Her fingers moved toward the window without her control, writing the name Michael on the glass. Soon, the words disappeared in the fog as she leaned on the window. Like a bird flying out of its nest, her thoughts flew away from the room. The temperature within the hot coffee dropped by several degrees and started to turn cold coffee. Ever since she lost the prototype and the weapon after so much preparation and planning, she lost her appetite. During the last couple of days, Raylene became another mother to Gaia. She made sure Gaia's been eating and drinking well despite her lack of appetite. When Gaia refused to eat, Rayle would just knock on her head like an angry mother and feed her with her hands as she did to Cindy and Rummy. Looking at the dancing tornadoes, Gaia's consciousness drifted away as her eyes slowly closed. When her head fell, she became wary and emptied the warm coffee in a single gulp. Then, she strolled toward the neatly made bed and just collapsed on the bed like a lifeless body. Both her body and mind were exhausted to the point that as soon as she hit the bed, she entered into a dreamless sleep. The rain droplets played drums upon hitting the windows and the roof, playing a lullaby like a loving mother. As she was on the verge of completely losing sentience, she felt a hand around her waist. Gaia thought it was a dream as the embrace felt like it came from Michael. He used to hug her tight while sleeping. Every fiber in her body wanted the warmth to last longer, and did not want this dream to end. Then, the hand around her waist tightened its hold, pulling her closer toward a gentle warmth. It felt too real to be a dream. She abruptly opened her eyes as her body was about to jolt out of bed. But her body froze the moment she saw Michael's face. Michael gently brushed the strand of hair falling on her face. On the other hand, Gaia looked as though his shocking return petrified her. She was speechless. "Is this real?" Gaia muttered. "You tell me," Michael said, slowly moving his head closer to hers. She could feel his warm breath breezing past her like a morning breeze. When she opened her mouth, he closed it with his own lips. Their bodies pressed together heatedly against each other, breathing heavily as they tasted each other's lips. Everything around Gaia blurred and silenced. The only sound she heard was the sound of his hands gently cupping her face to position her face for a heavenly kiss. They only departed when they lost their breath. "When did you come back?" asked Gaia. Her alluring eyes sparkled with joy at seeing Michael. It was too much of a shock to her. "Just a few minutes ago. The moment I stepped into this world, I came running to see the most beautiful girl in the entire universe." Michael pinched Gaia's nose playfully. "I see the demon's grave has turned you cheesy," Gaia purred. She threw her arm around Michael's shoulder and tried to pull him closer, although there was no space between them. "Where is Vidora?" Gaia asked. "They went to see Raylene. I think we should talk about why I sensed some gloom in your eyes. Something happened?" Despite how happy she looked, Michael could see through her eyes and read her like a book. After entering the portal, he appeared somewhere in the crystal ocean that divides Elon and Azair. From there, he used runic teleportation to reach the castle. So he didn't know what had happened while he was gone. As she heard him, she moved closer and rested her head on his chest. "I fucked up," Gaia said in a husky voice. Then, Gaia began to tell Michael what had happened since he left for the demon's grave. When she finally finished her story, Michael surprised her with a chuckle. "You idiot. That was the reason why you look so gloomy?" Michael rubbed her head as she looked at him with shock and surprise. To be honest, she never expected Michael to take her failure so casually, like it didn't matter. "I failed you," Gaia purred. Once again, Michael ruffled her head. He liked to ruffle her perfectly combed hair and kiss the top of her head. Although he was not the most romantic man in the world, he never passed on an opportunity to pamper her and shower her with kisses. "Nothing you ever do will fail or disappoint me, you silly idiot. What if Noah destroyed the prototype and the weapon? You did everything you could." But, Gaia muttered as Michael shook his head. "No buts. Listen." Michael lifted up Gaia and put her body on him. He then cupped her face and looked her in the eyes. "If I failed to do something, would you be disappointed in me?" Gaia shook her head. "Of course, I will kill you if you don't marry me or look at another girl. But I won't feel disappointed." Gaia punched Michael in the chest. Despite her words, he never doubted Michael, not even for a second. She trusted him enough to leave Michael with thousands of beauties in a room without a worry in the world. The trust they had in each other was stronger than anything in the world. They both knew a relationship couldn't survive without trust. Her words made Michael chuckle. "See, that's how I feel. Whatever you do or don't, you will never disappoint me. Besides, why are you looking at the events as failures? You and I both know it was Noah who destroyed the weapon along with the Hontorum shipyard. We can use it to turn the dwarves against the guardians. They pretended to be elves, so I'd say the elves won't be happy about their names being dragged through the mud. So we can give the elves and the dwarves a common enemy," said Michael. He came up with the plan on the spot, and as simple as it may sound, the plan would bring major heat upon the Guardian Guild once he provided proof about Noah's involvement to both dwarves and the elves. Now that Gaia said they turned a guardian into their spy, it would be relatively easier for him to gather the needed proof to make Noah's life harder. Noah may have gained the upper hand in the new weapon matter, but Michael would soon pay him back several folds. "I've returned from the most dangerous places in the world. Can you put aside these matters and give me some love?" Michael winked. "Only kisses for you, my darling," said Gaia in a playful tone. "Until you marry me." "Why did I agree to that?" I have the most beautiful sexy girl as my fiancée. And I don't get to do more. Michael pretended to be disappointed. As far as Michael was concerned, relationships were more than having physical satisfaction. He didn't think Gaia would say no if he insisted, but Michael respected her wish not to have anything physical more than a kiss. He was quite happy with that because she was the one for him. This was a magical relationship Michael would treasure forever. Every time he looked into her eyes, he promised himself not to let anything happen to her. The Dark Lord was right to reset the entire universe. If something were to happen to Gaia, Michael would go to hell or heaven to bring her back, no matter the cost. Even the Dark Lord has to obey his woman, Michael, Gaia chuckled. Inside these walls I am the boss. Is that so? Michael grabbed her by her slender waist, pushed her to the side, and got on top of her. He held her wrists firmly. Bastard, don't even think about it, Gaia squirmed. I am not thinking about anything, Michael said with a foxy smile. The following hours were spent cuddling and kissing. They talked for hours until they both fell asleep under the cozy blanket. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.